I reincarnated as a doomed villain. 5 days later, my busty Yandere Maid locked me in a steel room beneath Carrington Manor. She told me I was not leaving until we made my family's next heir. Her name was Yvette Huxley. She had served House Carrington since childhood. My father had given me 3 years to produce one heir with her. I told Yvette she was free to choose someone else. She answered by drugging my black tea, taking the only key, and smiling like I had proposed. A strange black book had already warned me that Yvette could kill me, so there I was, underground, chained to a bed by my own maid. Yvette could forge liquid metal into blades, command the staff, and predict this body's habits. I wanted one basic thing. I wanted the right to choose what happened to my life. Yvette believed loving me gave her that right instead. So how did I escape a woman who could cut through the door faster than I could open it? The door had no handle on my side. Yvette wore the key around her neck. She could bend steel by closing her hand. She called that devotion. I called it a prison with excellent room service. Yvette looked genuinely happy. She checked my bruises, brought my meals, and discussed our future while the lock sat between us. That calm certainty scared me more than shouting. We need to go back 5 days, to my bedroom, where I woke in the body of the novel's disposable villain. In my previous life, I had been a professional-level fantasy addict, with amateur-level road awareness. A car solved that second problem permanently. The last thing I remembered was headlights. The next thing I saw was a silk canopy above an absurdly large bed. Morning light filled the royal bedroom. My hands looked too smooth. The mirror showed a blonde noble with sharp eyes and an offensively good jawline. The car accident had at least left me with a better jawline. Then, I recognized the face. Declan Carrington, the spoiled heir from the novel. He had spent years tormenting an illegitimate princess destined to become the world-saving heroine. He was handsome, rich, connected, and terminally stupid. His ending was simple. He drugged Princess Heather at a royal ceremony. The heroine exposed him. His title vanished. His family fell with him. He begged in the streets and died hungry. The novel spent 3 paragraphs on his death. I had spent several nights cheering for it. Now I owned the body. Disgusting. I had inherited the face 5 days before the first crime that ruined everything. That was useful information with a 5-day deadline. I grabbed a fruit knife from the breakfast tray and nicked my finger. Pain shot through my hand. Blood welled immediately. Excellent, I muttered. Reality works. The bedroom door opened. Yvette Huxley entered carrying folded clothes. She was the Carrington maid who had grown up beside the original Declan. That explained why she walked into his room without knocking. She also looked unfairly good in a black and white uniform. In my defense, reincarnation had already damaged my judgment. Yvette saw the blood and dropped the clothes. Young master. She crossed the room, caught my wrist, and pulled my hand toward her. Before I could ask for a bandage, Yvette placed my cut finger in her mouth. Warm magic closed the wound under her tongue. I forgot every useful word. Yvette released my hand and inspected the healed skin. Her thumb stayed against my palm longer than the healing required. Why did you hurt yourself? I needed to know whether this was real. Her gaze sharpened. What does that mean? Headache. I hid the knife. Terrible decision. New personal record. Yvette kept watching me. I cleared my throat. Thank you. Her hand froze around my wrist. The original Declan ignored servants until they disappointed him. A simple thank you stunned Yvette more than the cut. You thanked me, Yvette whispered. I plan to make it a habit. A faint blush reached her cheeks. Then she smiled with enough warmth to make the later steel room feel personally insulting. At that moment, I only saw a beautiful maid who had healed me. I still had a ceremony to survive. The ceremony was the next evening. The original Declan would drug Princess Heather there and lure the heroine into the room. That scene began the chain that ended with his public ruin. My first plan was painfully reasonable. I would avoid the heroine, apologize for the bullying, and never touch Heather's drink. Reasonable planning lasted until a blank black book fell straight onto my head. I hit the carpet. The book bounced once and landed on my wounded hand. One bead of blood touched the cover. Black pages snapped open by themselves. Well, I told the book, you could have used the table. The room disappeared. I woke standing in a dark space with no walls, chains pulled tight around my arms. A woman stepped out of the darkness, close enough for me to feel her breath. Her face stayed hidden, but her voice reached me clearly. Become cruel, she whispered. Belong to me. Stay with me forever. The chains tightened until pain tore through my shoulders. I tried to pull away. The woman laughed softly and touched my cheek like she already owned it. Be the man everyone fears, she whispered. Then nobody can take you from me. A blade of black metal formed beside her hand. It stopped against my throat. Then the black book threw me back into the bedroom. I landed beside the bed, gasping. The pain remained. 3 words had appeared across the open page. Do not change destiny. My cheat system had arrived, assaulted me, threatened me, and refused to elaborate. Beautiful. Premium service. The warning proved one useful thing. Changing events was possible, or the book would not threaten me over it. The danger came from changing them blindly, so I changed strategies. I would preserve the ceremony setup. Heather would sleep for a few minutes. The heroine would enter on schedule. I would surrender before anyone touched Heather, accept a broken engagement, and stop the original Declan's later revenge spiral. It was morally ugly. It was still better than exile, starvation, and ruining House Carrington with me. If fate demanded a villain, I would play one with better risk management. The next morning, in Carrington Manor's breakfast room, I met the family I was trying to save. Duke Carrington sat at the head of the table. He was my father and the Empire's undefeated marshal. Armored guards stood straighter when he entered a room. Duchess Carrington sat beside him. My mother pulled me into a hug before I reached my chair. "You look pale," the Duchess murmured. "Are you nervous about Heather?" "Mostly about surviving dinner." My father laughed. "Then marry the princess quickly. Fear builds character." The engagement to Princess Heather was political. House Carrington held too much military power. The royal family wanted that power secured through marriage. My new parents spoke warmly, teased me, and filled my plate. My mother remembered which pastry Declan liked. My father complained that I had grown soft, then pushed the larger serving toward me. That made the stakes worse. The novel had destroyed House Carrington beside Declan without giving them much thought. These people looked at me like I was worth protecting. A maid approached with tea. Her hands shook before she reached the table. Josie Talbot was a young Carrington maid burning with fever. She caught the rug, and the cup spilled across my sleeve. Everyone stopped moving. Josie dropped to her knees. "Young master, please forgive me." Yvette stepped behind her. Her body went rigid, ready for the punishment everyone expected. I touched Josie's forehead. She was boiling. "Why are you working?" Josie stared at the floor. "The ceremony needs every hand." "Then the ceremony can borrow healthier hands." I helped her stand. "Go rest. Any servant with a fever does the same." Josie looked at Yvette, waiting for the trap. Yvette studied my wet sleeve, then my face. "You heard him. Rest." The other maids moved at once. One small kindness changed the duty list for the entire ceremony. I did not know the bill yet. That night, at Black Ridge Night Market, I used the original Declan's VIP pass to enter a shop hidden behind a shuttered bakery. The masked apothecary placed 2 tiny vials on the counter. "The clear one vanishes in any drink," she explained. "The red enhancer makes it fast. Spill the mixture, and the dose becomes unstable." "How unstable?" "She wakes early, or she sleeps too long. Divine magic burns it faster." Princess Heather controlled ice. Of course her magic burned sedatives faster. I slid my gold across the counter. The masked apothecary counted it once. "Short." "If I leave without it?" I asked. "Then tomorrow belongs to fate." A gloved hand placed a sealed Carrington root note beside my money. Yvette stood at my shoulder. "You left without an escort," she told me. "I nearly climbed into the wall." The masked apothecary checked the note and pushed both vials toward me. Yvette had traded family supply information to cover my shortfall. "House Carrington will notice that route is exposed," the seller warned. Yvette's eyes stayed on me. "Then he should make the purchase worthwhile." I pocketed the potion. "How long have you been following me?" Yvette adjusted my collar. "Long enough." That answer should have scared me more. Instead, I was busy being grateful the walking red flag had paid my bill. The next evening, at the royal ceremony, every noble in the ballroom watched me enter. They expected arrogance. I gave them manners. Princess Heather Belrose was my political fiancée and the emperor's third daughter. She wore silver, watched every exit, and looked good enough to make diplomacy unnecessarily difficult. I bowed. "Princess Heather." Heather raised one eyebrow. "Did someone replace you? Several people have suggested it." Her mouth twitched. 1 point for me. Alyssa Fontaine stood nearby with her companion, Bethany Winters. Alyssa was the future heroine and the woman the original Declan had bullied for years. I gave her a careful bow. "Alyssa, I owe you an apology." Alyssa stepped back. "Keep it fair." Trust needed evidence, and I had arrived wearing her abuser's face. The nobles stopped pretending they were not listening. One man lowered the glass he had been pretending to drink from. A woman near Heather quietly waved her daughter farther from me. My reputation had shifted from predictable monster to possible lunatic. Progress. When the formal speech ended, I offered Heather my hand for the dance. She accepted because refusing would create a political scene. Then she leaned close enough to smile politely for the crowd. "Try to keep up," Heather murmured. "Last time, you told me the floor should feel honored beneath your boots." I winced. "He really said that?" "You said that." I winced again. "Then I apologize on behalf of my mouth." Heather let me turn her beneath the chandeliers. "Your mouth remains under investigation. In my defense, it has excellent bone structure." She laughed once, then looked annoyed that I had earned it. "The dance gave me the opening I needed." "This engagement traps both of us," I told her. "Help me end it." Heather's steps slowed. "You spent years bragging that you would own a princess." "I was an idiot. You remain a suspect." I kept my voice low. "Come upstairs, I'll show you the terms I want." Heather's eyes narrowed, but control over her future mattered more than her disgust. "If this is another boast, I will break your other cheek in advance," she warned. "I appreciate the scheduling clarity." She followed. After the dance, in my private guest room, I prepared black tea while Heather stood beside the window. The original scene required Alyssa to find us there. I left the door unlatched and loosened my formal coat. Ugly theater, controlled outcome. I poured the invisible sedative into both cups. Heather watched every movement. "You drink first," she ordered. Naturally, the princess had survived court by distrusting every cup. I lifted mine. Heather reached across, swapped our cups, and spilled a thin line of tea over her glove. She smiled. "Now drink." I touched the cup to my lips without swallowing. Heather drank from mine. Her smile held for 3 seconds, then her knees folded. I caught her before she hit the carpet and lowered her onto the bed. Heather had beaten the obvious trap and still lost. Both cups were drugged. The masked apothecary had warned me that suspicious targets swapped drinks. The original Declan would have trusted one poisoned cup and gotten embarrassed. I trusted Heather to distrust me. Petty. Also effective. I opened the door wider and waited for Alyssa. 1 minute passed, then 2. The corridor remained empty. I removed my coat, arranged the room to match the original scene, and immediately hated myself for how criminal that looked. Heather stirred. The enhancer had mixed badly after the spill. Her ice gift was burning through the reduced dose. Alyssa still did not arrive. Bethany later told me what happened in the corridor. Josie rested because I sent her away. Bethany spilled fruit punch on Alyssa. Alyssa reached the corridor, but Yvette cleaned her dress and redirected both women with cake. My kindness had changed the route. The public exposure had become a private disaster. Heather's eyes opened. Her gaze moved from the bed to my loosened coat, then to the 2 cups. Her palm hit my face hard enough to turn the room sideways. She found the second dosed cup, smelled it, and looked at me with fresh disgust. "You prepared for me to protect myself." I held her stare. "I prepared for the woman I knew you were." Heather's grip tightened. "That makes this worse." Ice wrapped around my ankle before I recovered. Heather drove me to the floor and pressed a knee between my shoulders. "You poisoned me." Her voice shook with fury. "You wanted freedom, so you stole mine." The accusation hurt more than the slap. "I planned to end the engagement without hurting you." Heather twisted my arm higher. "You drugged me because asking required my answer." She was right. I had tried to control fate by controlling her. "I'm sorry," I managed. "Save it for the Emperor." A knock struck the open door. A temporary banquet maid stood in the corridor with a cake tray. Heather glanced toward her. I did not. Temporary hires wore blue ribbons that night. They were allowed in the ballroom and kitchens. They were forbidden from the private guest wing. This woman wore the ribbon on her sleeve. Her right hand stayed hidden beneath the tray. The cake was a cover. "Heather, move!" The temporary maid dropped the tray. A blade flashed beneath it and she lunged straight for the princess. Seconds later, inside the sealed guest room, Princess Heather raised a wall of ice between herself and the temporary maid. The attacker's blade struck the ice and stopped an inch from Heather's throat. I had identified the assassin. Identifying her gave me exactly 1 breath. The temporary maid kicked the door shut. A red mark flashed across the frame. Through the narrowing gap, I saw a second banquet worker press a matching seal from the corridor. Then, the door locked solid. 2 assassins had entered through the temporary staffing rush. One stayed to kill Heather. The other sealed the room and ran. Heather ripped an ice spear from the wall and drove the attacker backward. Frost raced beneath the assassin's boots, trying to lock both ankles. The woman expected it. She stabbed one boot into the carpet and used the blade as an anchor, turning Heather's trap into a spinning cut. Heather ducked. A lock of silver hair fell across the tea table. "Untie me," I told her. Heather did not look away from the assassin. "You poisoned me." "Yes, terrible timing for accountability." The assassin threw 3 black beads across the carpet. Heather snapped her fingers. Ice covered the first 2. The third exploded. The blast filled the room with heat. The windows burst outward. Heather's shield saved us, but the explosion shattered the ice around my ankle and drove her into the desk. The assassin smiled. "The princess is slower than advertised." Heather wiped blood from her lip. "Come closer and verify it." There she was, furious, poisoned, half-drained, and still giving orders. I respected it deeply from behind an overturned chair. The assassin rushed. Heather met her with an ice blade. Steel and frozen magic cracked together. Each exchange drove Heather closer to the wall. I grabbed the sealed door handle and pulled. The red mark burned my palm. No exit. The attacker expected Heather's power. She had prepared fire charges, insulated boots, and a short sword that shed frost after every clash. Every tool had one job. Break the ice, drain the princess, finish the kill before palace guards opened the seal. She expected me to stay useless. At that point, fair assumption. Heather trapped the assassin's left foot in ice. The woman cut her own boot free, rolled and hurled another explosive bead. I kicked the chair into its path. The blast shattered the wood between us. Heather used the opening to drive her spear through the attacker's shoulder. The assassin staggered. For one beautiful second, I thought Heather had cooked her. Then the woman laughed. She pulled a dark red vial from her sleeve. Heather's expression changed. "That is child blood concentrate." The assassin bit the stopper off. "Enough children to buy one royal death." She drank. Red light spread under her skin. The ice spear cracked inside her shoulder and blew apart. Somebody had bled children for that vial, and the assassin drank it without blinking. Heather raised both hands. Ice covered the ceiling, walls, and broken floor. The assassin crossed the room before the frost finished forming. Her sword hit Heather's shield. The shield shattered. Heather crashed against the bedpost. Her ice magic flickered around her fingers and died. She tried to rise. One leg failed. The assassin kicked the spear away and stepped over the shattered shield. Then she slowed down and turned the blade toward me. The assassin lifted the blade over her chest. "House Carrington's spoiled dog can watch," she said. "He was never important." Wrong read. I had no training. My ribs hurt. Heather had already pinned me to the carpet once. I still knew where the blade was going, so I stepped between them. Steel entered beneath my ribs. The impact lifted me onto my toes. Heat spread across my chest. Heather stared up at me. "Now," I told her. The assassin tried to pull the sword free. I grabbed her wrist and held it inside me. Heather's hand slapped the floor. Ice erupted beneath the assassin, climbed her body, and locked her in place. The princess drove one final spear through the attacker's chest. The assassin's smile vanished. Her body hit the carpet beside the ruined cake. The red seal on the door flickered. Heather had survived. I had technically improved my reputation. Then my knees stopped working. Heather caught me before I fell. The same woman who had pinned me moments earlier pressed both hands over my wound. "Why?" she demanded. "Because she was going to kill you. You poisoned me." Held her gaze. "I know, I still wasn't letting her kill you." "I did not hire her," I said. "I wanted the engagement ended. My plan was disgusting. The assassin was never part of it." Blood filled my mouth. Breathing became work. Heather shouted toward the sealed door, but the red mark held. I caught her wrist. "I'm sorry. You can apologize after the doctor arrives." I swallowed blood. "I did like you." Heather went still. I forced the words out, more than I had any right to after tonight. Her fingers tightened over my wound. "Declan, stay awake." My hand slipped from her wrist. Heather struck the seal with ice until the door cracked. "Get a doctor! Bring the best one in the Empire!" Her voice followed me into darkness. While doctors fought for my body, the black book pulled my mind into a white void. I stood without a wound. The rude book floated in front of me, open to a page bearing Heather's name. One bar showed rage, another showed trust that had previously been empty. I had almost died, and the trust bar had moved. Apparently that counted as progress. A line appeared beneath the bars. My rescue had moved both bars, but the book offered no explanation. It reduced human emotion to numbers and ignored my chest wound. "Do not give up." "Now you encourage me?" I asked. "Your bedside manner needs work." The page turned red. The void dropped away before the book bothered to explain whether I was dead or alive. Yvette later repeated the account my father sent home about the second assassin. He fled toward Blackridge before dawn, still wearing a banquet coat over his armor. Duke Carrington met him on the road. My father carried no escort. He did not need one. The assassin saw the Carrington lion crest and raised both hands. His sword fell into the mud. "I can name the buyer." Duke Carrington kept walking. The horses behind the assassin backed away before their riders understood why. "You harmed my son," my father told him. "Your buyer can explain himself next." Flames rolled across the road. The nearest trees bent away from the heat. The assassin's hired escort dropped their weapons and crawled into the ditch. The support assassin never reached Blackridge. That was how the Empire remembered the Fire Lion. One warning, one decision, no surviving second mistake. 3 days later, back in my bedroom at Carrington Manor, I woke with Yvette asleep beside the bed, her hand wrapped around my wrist. Medicine bottles covered the table, fresh bandages pulled tight around my chest. Yvette's hair had fallen loose. She looked exhausted and beautiful enough to make terrible decisions seem reasonable. I had recently set the standard for terrible decisions, so I kept that observation private. My fingers moved. Yvette's eyes opened immediately. "Young master." She leaned over me and checked my face, pulse, and bandage in one sweep. "You were unconscious for 3 days! Did I miss breakfast? You nearly died!" I rasped. "So no breakfast." Her grip tightened. Yvette had cleaned the wound, changed the bandages, and handled every dose the doctor ordered. She also refused to let another maid stay alone with me. The doctor tried to dismiss her twice. Yvette moved a chair in front of the door and invited him to try a third time. He treated me with her watching. Yvette's care already came with control. I still had not seen how far she would take it. "What happened after the fight?" I asked. Yvette poured water and held the cup herself. "Princess Heather broke the seal. She summoned the Empire's best doctor and stayed until he stabilized you." That explained why I still had blood inside me. Yvette's mouth thinned. Then she testified that the assassin targeted her and you saved her. House Carrington was cleared before the Emperor questioned the other great families. Heather had every reason to bury me after the poison. Instead, her testimony kept my family off the suspect list. The Emperor closed Blackridge Night Market and hunted the temporary staff network. Rival houses got the pressure. House Carrington kept its name. Heather won that reversal. The Emperor merely locked it in. The bedroom door opened. 2 Carrington maids entered with medicine, saw me awake, and stopped. Neither smiled. Both watched my hands. The original Declan had taught them to expect pain whenever he felt any. One maid kept her weight near the door. The other held the medicine tray against her chest. Yvette lifted a black cup. Drink. I smelled it and recoiled. That is medicine? It is the doctor's strongest recovery tonic. I stared into the cup. It smells like a boot confessed inside it. One maid flinched. She expected me to throw the cup at her. I took it from Yvette and drank the entire thing. The tonic hit my stomach like a personal insult. I turned and vomited into the wash bowl. The maid stared. I wiped my mouth. Nobody gets whipped. I am simply losing to the herbs? One maid covered a laugh. The other finally lowered her shoulders. Tiny status reversal. Horrible aftertaste. Yvette cleaned my face. Did anything happen between you and Princess Heather before the assassin arrived? Her tone stayed gentle while her grip on the cloth tightened. She slapped me. Yvette's smile sharpened. Only once. Please focus on my recovery. She gave me another spoonful of medicine. Apparently jealousy came with extra spoonfuls. That night, after Yvette left the medicine beside my bed, I wrote 4 lines on a sheet of paper. Survive the villain route, protect House Carrington, control the Black Book, become strong enough that nobody could decide my future with 1 blade, 1 order, or 1 key. Heather's ice gift had folded me. Alyssa would one day collect enough divine power to make Heather look reasonable. I had good cheekbones and a fresh chest wound. If I meant to outgrow Alyssa, the Black Book needed to start earning its keep. Black Book, I called. The artifact shot from beneath the bed and hit me directly in the groin. I folded over the bandages. You are a terrible ally. The Black Book opened on my lap. Its pages held a rough record of the assassin I had personally watched. Red lines marked future dangers. One page showed her first step during the fight, repeated from several angles. The book had recorded only what touched my senses and blood bond. It could not name the employer or show where the second assassin came from. Rude, painful, and at least consistent. I touched the drawing. The bedroom vanished. I stood inside a copy of the sealed guest room. The assassin waited across from me with a clean sword and no wound. Okay, I told the book. A warning would have been polite. The assassin moved. 3 seconds later, the sword entered my chest again. Pain exploded through me. I woke on the same starting mark. The wound was gone. The pain stayed. A small line appeared on the wall. Observed movement retained. The rule was cruelly simple. The Black Book could rebuild opponents and structures I had seen. Death inside reset the room. Pain and practice followed me back. My cheat system was a torture gym with excellent retention metrics. I stepped forward again. Attempt 2 lasted 4 seconds. The 12th lasted 6. At 40, I could read her shoulder before the first cut. 80 deaths taught me to stop reaching for the sealed door. Attempt 100 made her turn once. 20 deaths later, I caught her sleeve. At 150, I forced her to use the explosive bead. She killed me immediately afterward each time, but the tiny wins stayed. The book killed me in every convenient direction. Blade, kick, explosion, wall. At one point, it dropped on my face between attempts like I needed encouragement. My hands shook between resets. My chest remembered the real blade each time the fake one entered. I learned to breathe through it because panic made the assassin faster. I kept going. Pain inside the book was cheaper than begging outside it. On attempt 1085, I stopped trying to beat her. I focused on stealing the one movement that kept saving her. My body blurred sideways. Her sword missed my throat. I survived 27 seconds, then she buried me in the wall. The room reset, but a new word burned across the page in my hand. Shadow step. By dawn, I returned to my bedroom and stood beside the bed. The technique had worked inside the book. I needed proof it existed outside. I focused on the door. My body snapped across the room. For one beautiful second, I was faster than sight. Then smoke rose from my right boot. I yanked it off and slapped the fire out. Shadow step worked. It also cooked my foot because my real body lacked the strength to carry the spell. Every shortcut came with a bill. Mine smelled like burned socks. I sat on the carpet and looked at the Carrington crest above the fireplace. The second assassin had seen that crest and panicked because my father was the Fire Lion. Duke Carrington had never lost a battle. He had trained royal guards, crushed border armies, and turned one road into an execution ground before breakfast. My father was the best combat teacher in the Empire, and he lived down the hall. The bedroom door opened. Yvette stepped inside wearing the new silver keys of Carrington's head maid. "The Duke wants you in the family salon," she told me. "Now." I grabbed my boot and stood. I had finally found the perfect teacher. The family meeting was about to take him away. The next morning, in Carrington Manor's family salon, Yvette stood beside my mother wearing the silver keys of the new head maid. The former head maid had resigned after the ceremony security failure. Yvette had taken her authority, her staff, and access to every renovation map in the manor. 2 senior maids waited outside for her instructions. Yvette gave 3 orders, reassigned the night watch, and had the room moving before either woman finished bowing. At the time, that sounded efficient. "You know where this is going." Duchess Carrington pulled me into another crushing hug before I reached the sofa. "Call me mother properly," she ordered. "I almost lost you. My ribs are still negotiating with the doctor. They can negotiate after I finish." She squeezed harder. Then my mother placed my hand over her stomach. "You are getting a younger sibling." For one clean second, everyone smiled. My father smiled from beside the window. Yvette lowered her gaze, but I saw her smile too. Now there was a child in House Carrington who could lose everything if I repeated Declan's ending. Then the Imperial messenger arrived. The sealed order sent Duke Carrington to the Eastern Front against the Abyssal Host. The strongest demon force was massing beyond the border. In the novel, Alyssa eventually became powerful enough to stop its major invasion 3 years later. Right now, my father had to hold the line without her. He folded the order and looked at me. "I leave this afternoon. I had found the best teacher alive at dawn." The war order took him before lunch. "Train me before you go," I said. My father's eyebrows rose. "You used to avoid the practice yard like it collected taxes. I recently discovered that swords hurt. That lesson usually improves attendance." He crossed the room and struck my shoulder with one heavy hand. Pride showed plainly on his face. "You protected Princess Heather while untrained and wounded," Duke Carrington told me. "That was courage. Now build the strength to survive your own courage." "I can do that faster with you here." His expression hardened. "The Empire needs the fire lion at the front. House Carrington needs its heir standing when I return." No joke belonged there. I nodded. Before the meeting ended, my father turned toward Yvette. She stood perfectly straight, but her fingers closed around the new keyring. "Yvette was raised in this house with an expectation," the Duke told me. "Your mother and I always believed she might become your partner one day." The Duchess touched Yvette's arm. It was never a legal promise. The girl still built her life around it. Yvette's cheeks colored. She did not look at me. My father continued. "Your engagement to Heather is political theater. When the princess secures her own position, it can end. That should have been good news." Then he gave me the order. "Within 3 years, produce 1 Carrington heir with Yvette." The salon went silent. Yvette's keys stopped moving. My mother's smile faded. Even my father seemed to hear the ugliness after saying it aloud. I looked at Yvette. She finally met my eyes. She looked hopeful and terrified. My father had turned both our futures into a family assignment. "I will protect House Carrington," I told him. "I will not order Yvette into my bed." The Duke frowned. "I ordered an heir. I did not order cruelty. The result still belongs to 2 people." My mother watched me carefully. Yvette's hand tightened around the keys. My father held my gaze, then gave one short nod. "Make your choices. Live long enough to answer for them." That afternoon, at the Imperial outpost beyond the capital, I watched Duke Carrington mount a warhorse beneath the lion crest. Soldiers stopped talking when the fire lion entered the yard. My father pulled me into a brief, brutal hug. "Grow strong," he told me. "Protect your mother. Protect the child. Trust Yvette." I wanted to believe him. Duchess Carrington left soon after in a guarded prenatal carriage. My father's deployment made the manor a target, and her doctor wanted her inside protected Carrington territory. By sunset, both parents were gone. Yvette controlled the house. I found her alone beneath the front stairs, still holding the head maid's keys. "Yvette," she turned quickly. "Young master, I meant what I said in the salon." Her smile returned. "About protecting the family? About choice?" The smile thinned. I stepped closer. "You have served this family your whole life. You deserve freedom. Choose someone better than me. Choose anyone you actually want." Yvette stared at me. The hall clock ticked behind us. She had spent years waiting for one sentence from this family. I had answered it by offering her to an imaginary stranger. "You think I do not know what I want?" she asked. "I think the old Declan never gave you room to find out." Small sound came from her hand. One of the silver keys bent between her fingers. Blood appeared along her palm where the metal cut her glove. I reached for her. "Yvette, your hand!" She hid it behind her back. "Thank you for freeing me," she whispered. Her voice stayed polite. She did not blink. "I thought I had solved the Yandere problem." That belief lasted 30 seconds. Late that night, in Carrington Manor's library, I chose training over sleep. My father was gone. Heather could flatten me. Yvette could bend steel keys with one hand. I was dangerous on paper, and weak in every fight. The black book lay open beside 3 combat manuals and an old household security guide. The black book copied any technique I read closely enough. Touching its page rebuilt the lesson inside the training space. Pain handled the teaching. I loaded a sword stance, basic body conditioning, and the security guide section on warded locks. The lock material looked useless beside combat magic, but the assassination had taught me one thing. A locked door had kept me out of the fight. The book smacked shut on my fingers. Your support remains inspiring. The library door opened. Yvette entered carrying dinner and a bottle of rare wine. She had changed her torn glove. Her smile looked gentle again. Your mother asked me to make sure you eat, Yvette told me. She also asked you to avoid crushing my ribs. I made no promise. She poured the wine. I covered the glass. Coffee. The kitchen coffee spoiled this morning. Every grain? Yvette's smile deepened. Tragic. She replaced the wine with black tea. The smell reminded me of Heather's room. I looked at Yvette. She tilted her head. You chose black tea when you wanted Princess Heather to lower her guard. My stomach tightened before the drink touched it. You followed me that night. I always follow you when you leave without protection. The answer was possessive. It also sounded honest. I should have put the cup down. Instead, I took one cautious sip while watching her hands. The bitterness arrived late. My fingers went numb. Yvette caught the cup before it fell. Yvette! I tried to stand. My knees folded under me. What did you do? She knelt beside my chair and stroked my hair. I accepted your freedom. The library tilted. The last thing I saw was the woman I trusted lifting me into her arms. The black book slid from the table. Yvette caught it before it hit the floor and tucked it against my chest. Betrayer, I managed. Yvette kissed my forehead. You will understand. When I woke, beneath Carrington Manor, steel pressed cold against my back. My wrists were locked above me, my ankles were bound. The room had no windows and one reinforced door. A wardrobe, bath screen, stocked shelves, and fresh linens made the place look prepared for months. Yvette sat beside the bed in a plain black dress. A ribbon of liquid metal moved around her fingers. She leaned close and touched my cheek. Become cruel, Yvette whispered. Belong to me, stay with me forever. The voice matched, so did the words. Her touch completed the black book's vision. My stomach dropped. You were the woman in the book. Yvette smiled. Then you already know what I want. Untie me. No! Her liquid metal tightened around the locks. Yvette told me my body, soul, future, and family line belonged with her. She called the hidden room our home. She called the restraints temporary encouragement. I refused. She ignored every refusal. What followed stayed behind that steel door. I will not dress it up as romance. Yvette forced intimacy I never agreed to more than once while I had no way to leave. By the time she finally released my wrists, I understood the first rule of the room. Her care never counted as my consent. The black book appeared beside the bed and opened to a red warning. Yvette Huxley, death route active. I knew who the woman in the vision was. I still did not know how I died. I looked at the woman who had known the original Declan since childhood. I had one ugly suspicion. Had Yvette encouraged his cruelty because a hated, isolated Declan would be easier to keep? I had no proof. Her love had already become dangerous without that answer. Yvette noticed the page and shut the book with one finger. Do not worry, she murmured. I would never hurt you. I looked at the restraints. Yvette followed my gaze and smiled. This is different. No, you just like this difference. Her smile disappeared. For 1 second, she stopped pretending the restraints were care. Then Yvette unlocked my wrists and ankles. I will give you more freedom when you stop trying to leave me, she said. You hear how insane that sounds? She ignored the comment and held up the only key. Yvette told me nobody else knew the room existed. Old cellar plans hid it, and her liquid metal magic covered the parts no worker could build openly. She had told the household I left early for the academy. My parents were away. The staff answered to her. Only her key opened the door. She leaned close. Princess Heather, Alyssa, Josie, any woman who tries to take you from me will disappear. My body went cold. Yvette tapped my nose. A joke! Nobody laughed. My body stayed cold. She took my clothes, carried the restraints, and left me behind the steel door. I waited until her footsteps vanished. Then, I attacked the door. I kicked the hinges. I hit the lock with a metal cup. I tried shadow step against the frame and nearly burned both feet. The door held, so I stopped wasting strength and studied it. The keyhole controlled several internal catches, with liquid metal reinforcing the bolts. I summoned the black book. It landed on my face. Good, you are still rude. Captivity gave me time, food, and a private training room. Yvette had accidentally built me the ugliest academy in the empire. I loaded the manuals I had already read. I trained sword movement until my arms failed. I did body conditioning until the stone floor felt soft. Yvette returned 3 times a day. That gave me 3 chances to watch her wrist, the key angle, and the sequence of clicks behind the steel. Then I traced the keyhole again and memorized every sound when Yvette used it. Heather would not stay stronger than me. Yvette would not stay strong enough to decide where I lived. The next evening, inside the steel room, Yvette returned with a bath, clean bandages, and dinner. She moved the tub with liquid metal and spoke like we were sharing a private honeymoon. "I brought your favorite soap," she told me. "You brought me kidnapping soap. It is lavender." Looked at the tub. "That does not improve the kidnapping." Yvette smiled and fed a metal ribbon through the room's drain. "Sit." I stayed standing. She raised one eyebrow. I pointed at the restraints in her hand. "No chains while I eat, no touching while I sleep, clothes tomorrow." Yvette considered each demand with a patient smile. "No chains while you eat," she agreed. "I will decide the rest." She granted one boundary. I took it. The meal smelled incredible. I ate 3 bites before Yvette asked whether I liked the meat. "Yeah, good." I mixed several magical beast organs used for fertility and stamina. I stopped chewing. Yvette looked pleased. "I have been helping your body adjust." I pushed the plate away. "You fed me breeding supplements? For our heir." The gross little meal had been another part of her plan. Then the room tilted again. I stared at the sauce. Yvette had hidden another dose in dinner. "Every comfort comes with control," I slurred. She caught me before my face reached the table. "You learn quickly." 2 days into captivity, Yvette offered me one small wish. Freedom earned an immediate no. Clothes received the same answer. She cut me off before I finished asking for a second key. "Choose something I can give you," Yvette told me. I looked at the steel door, then at her hopeful face. "Fish was never just fish. When I was little," I began, "I dreamed about the silver spirit fish from Lake Evermere." Yvette leaned closer. I put every ounce of fake nostalgia into my voice. "The season lasts only a few days. My father always promised we would go together. Now he is at war." That part was real enough to sting. I lowered my eyes. "Forget it. The lake is far. The spirits there are dangerous." Yvette caught both my hands. "I can bring you one." I looked at her with shameless admiration. "You might be the only woman in the Empire who could." Yvette searched my face for mockery. I gave her none. The praise had to feel real because part of it was. She could beat anything waiting in that lake. Her blush arrived instantly. The strongest woman in the manor went weak for one thing. Praise from me made distance and danger stop mattering. Yvette kissed my forehead without asking, promised to hurry, and took the only key. The steel door closed behind her. I counted her footsteps until they disappeared. Then I opened the black book and pressed it against the keyhole I had studied for 2 days. "You have the lock," I told it. "You have the security manual. Build me 1,000 copies." The room vanished. A row of steel doors appeared inside the training space. The first lock clicked shut. Yvette was riding toward Lake Evermere. I had until Yvette returned. I thought the fish request would free me. I had no idea my dinner order had put Yvette beside a jealous mage and a monster nobody else could kill. While I trained beneath Carrington Manor, Yvette reached Lake Evermere in a storm because I had asked for one fish. I learned the lake story later from Yvette and Ronan. Their versions disagreed about whether Yvette looked irritated or murderous. They agreed the gatekeeper should have kept his hands to himself. The road ended at a wooden barrier above the flooded shore. Rain hammered the lake hard enough to hide the far bank. A gatekeeper stepped in front of Yvette's horse. "Lake Evermere is closed." A dominant class spirit woke beneath the water. Yvette looked past him. "I need the silver spirit fish. You need to turn around." The gatekeeper caught her wrist before she passed. A liquid metal needle punched through his palm and pinned his hand to the barrier. The gatekeeper screamed as Yvette removed the needle. "You stabbed me," he shouted. "Pay for my hand." Yvette placed a pouch of gold in his bleeding palm and adjusted her glove. "That covers the injury." "You did that because I touched you?" Yvette met his stare. "You touched me." The gatekeeper pointed toward the shore. "There are monsters down there." Yvette adjusted her glove. "My young master asked for dinner." The gatekeeper looked at the storm, then at Yvette. "Love," Yvette added. He stepped aside. "Smartest decision made at that lake all day." Yvette dismounted and tied the horse beneath the barrier. The gatekeeper pressed the gold pouch against his palm. "People went down there an hour ago." "How many returned?" Yvette asked. "None yet." "Then they may know where the fish are." The gatekeeper stared after her. "That's your concern?" Yvette kept walking. "Declan dislikes waiting." I had never said that. This woman had kidnapped me, then invented personality flaws to justify punctual dinner. A blast shook the shoreline before the gatekeeper found another argument. Yvette followed the sound. At the waterline, 3 adventurers were already fighting the first spirit. Ronan Briggs led them with a sword and shield. He was broad, scarred, and stubborn enough to plant both boots against a creature made of water. Fiona Beckett, the party's fire mage, struck from behind him. Her flames turned the spirit's outer shell into steam. Maribel Kestrel held the whole formation together. She was Ronan's childhood friend, and the support mage feeding strength into his shield while keeping Fiona's fire from cooking everyone nearby. The spirit swung a fin wider than a wagon. Ronan caught it on his shield. His knees hit the mud. Maribel strengthened his arms and warned him left before a second fin reached his ribs. Fiona launched 3 firebolts. Rain killed one, another burned through the creature's jaw, the last curved too close to Ronan. Maribel bent that flame away from his back and drove it into the open wound. "Now, Fiona!" Ronan shouted. Fiona drove a fire spear through the creature's open mouth. Maribel's binding spell snapped around the spirit. It dragged her 2 steps through the mud. She held on. The fire spear burst. Steam punched across the shore. Ronan planted his shield over Fiona. Maribel took the full spray across her back. The first lake spirit collapsed across the shore. Ronan lowered his shield and grinned at Fiona. "Perfect timing." Fiona bumped his shoulder. "You only say that when I save you." Ronan caught her burned sleeve. "Then do not stop." Maribel wiped rain from her face. "My binding spell held it." Fiona looked back at her. "You saved Ronan twice." Ronan kept checking Fiona's arm. "You did your job, Maribel." Maribel looked at the hand he kept on Fiona's shoulder. She had just saved him twice, and she got an employee review. Maribel's fingers tightened around her staff. Then the lake rose behind them. The dead spirit's body split apart. Something much larger pushed through the water beneath it. The second spirit stood twice as tall. Black fins unfolded along its back. The pressure from its roar flattened the reeds and extinguished Fiona's remaining fire. Ronan's victory smile vanished. The gatekeeper had warned Yvette about one dominant spirit. Lake Evermere had 2. The larger creature struck before the party reset. Ronan raised his shield. The blow launched him through the mud. He rolled, came up on one knee, and charged again before Maribel could strengthen him. The spirit caught the shield between its teeth and flung him toward the reeds. Fiona tried to rebuild her fire. Rain killed the first flame in her palms. She forced a second one brighter. A wall of lake water hit her from the side and slammed her against a broken dock. Maribel threw a barrier over both of them. The spirit's claw came down. Her barrier cracked on the first hit. The second hit drove her knee through the wet boards. The third split the barrier from top to bottom. Maribel fell to one knee. Blood ran from her nose. "Ronan, move!" Ronan dragged himself between the spirit and Fiona. His shield arm hung wrong. He still raised the sword. "Take her and run," he told Maribel. Maribel stared at him. "We can still fight together. Protect Fiona. And you?" Ronan faced the spirit. "I will buy the distance." Fiona tried to push herself upright. "Ronan, do not be stupid." He glanced back at Fiona and smiled. He had just volunteered to die for her. Maribel's fingers stopped moving on her staff. The spirit raised its claw again. Yvette stepped between Ronan and the killing blow. Liquid metal spread from her sleeves and hardened into a curved shield. The claw hit. The shield did not move. Yvette looked over one shoulder. "Which part becomes the fish?" Ronan coughed mud. "What?" "The fish." Yvette's voice stayed calm. "My young master is waiting." The lake spirit struck again. Yvette's shield split into 12 silver ribbons. They wrapped the creature's arm, pulled it sideways, and buried its claw in the shore. Then the rest of her metal rose. Spears formed above the lake. Chains snapped around both fins. A scythe longer than the broken dock unfolded beside her. Ronan pushed himself upright. "You're a maid?" Yvette caught the scythe. "Head maid." The spirit tore one chain apart and opened its mouth. Yvette moved once. The silver blade crossed the creature from shoulder to hip. The dominant spirit separated cleanly and crashed into the lake in 2 pieces. The water went flat. The gatekeeper dropped the barrier pole uphill. Fiona lowered her hands. Ronan lowered his sword. Maribel's unfinished barrier dissolved around them. Ronan looked from the dead spirit to Yvette's clean gloves. "Which house trained you?" Yvette wiped rain from one glove. "House Carrington, as a knight." Yvette gave him the same look she gave dust on polished silver. "As a maid." Fiona immediately straightened despite her injured ankle. Maribel lowered her staff and addressed Yvette more carefully. "Your young master must be important." Yvette looked toward the road home. "He is everything." They heard devotion. I knew she meant ownership. The 3 adventurers had exhausted themselves on the first monster. Yvette cut the stronger one in half because I wanted dinner. That was Yvette's version of romance. She made it terrifyingly efficient. The dead spirit shrank as its magic drained away. 2 silver fish remained in the shallows, each marked with black gills. Yvette stepped toward them. Maribel caught her sleeve. "Do not touch the gills." A metal blade appeared beneath Maribel's chin. Maribel released the sleeve immediately. "The flesh is edible. The black tissue carries the poison." Yvette's blade stayed in place. "Will it harm Declan? If you prepare it badly, it will stop his heart." Yvette lowered the blade. "Teach me." Maribel blinked. The woman who had just cut a monster in half wanted recipe notes. Maribel showed her one careful cut. A drop from the black gill touched a wet plank. The wood turned gray and split. Yvette memorized the motion with the same calm face she used during combat. Ronan bound Fiona's injured shoulder nearby. He praised her for landing the first killing blow, then offered Maribel his wet cloak without looking at her. Maribel refused it. Yvette watched her cut around the poison. "You are angry with him." Maribel's knife paused. "A friend has loved a man for more than 10 years. Yvette glanced toward Ronan. "Your friend is staring at him like Fiona owes her money." Maribel's ears turned red. "I said a friend. You said it badly." Maribel gave up. "Ronan and I grew up together. He promised we would never leave each other." Across the shore, Ronan lifted Fiona onto his back because her ankle would not hold. Maribel looked down at the fish. "He barely sees me anymore." Yvette wrapped both cleaned fish in cloth. "Then stop waiting to be seen." Maribel looked up. Yvette tightened the knot. "Give him everything you have. Follow the desire you cannot cut out. Do not let another person choose your future for you." Yvette had locked me underground for refusing that exact logic. Now my captor was giving relationship advice. Maribel swallowed. "What if he refuses?" Yvette's expression barely changed. "People refuse when they are frightened or confused. Love should be stronger than fear." Ronan called Maribel's name from the shore. Fiona was fading in his arms. They needed to move. Maribel stood, but her hand remained against the fish knife. Yvette mounted her horse with the wrapped spirit fish secured behind the saddle. "Thank you," Maribel told her. Yvette looked toward the road back to Carrington Manor. "Declan is waiting." Then she rode into the rain. Ronan later told me what happened after Yvette left. Maribel followed him and Fiona for several steps. Then she stopped beneath the broken gate and turned toward empty air. The rain around her bent inward for one breath. Ronan called her again. Maribel did not answer him. Her fingers closed around the spot above her heart. She watched him carry Fiona. Her lips moved once, as though she were replying to a voice nobody else could hear. Then she whispered, "Yes." A black-red mark burned above her heart. Maribel folded into the mud. Ronan lowered Fiona and rushed back. When he pulled Maribel's collar aside to check her breathing, one dark thread crawled from the mark toward her throat. Rain struck the thread. It thinned, smoked, and almost vanished. Then the mark pulsed. The thread pulled back beneath her skin. Maribel woke and covered the mark with both hands. Ronan caught her shoulder. She flinched hard enough to make him release her. "What happened?" Ronan demanded. "I exhausted my magic," Maribel told him. "That's all. The mark was moving." Maribel pulled her collar closed. "You imagined it!" Ronan studied her face, then looked toward Fiona. Fiona groaned. He lifted Fiona again. Maribel's gaze followed Fiona. Ronan later described it as the first time he felt afraid of his oldest friend. Maribel stood alone in the rain while the man she had loved for 10 years carried another woman away. Her new mark pulsed once beneath her palm. I was still beneath Carrington Manor, practicing the same steel lock for the 1000th time. Yvette carried my dinner toward me. Maribel stayed behind with a mark that had moved beneath her skin. That evening, back in the steel room, I heard Yvette's key before I smelled the fish. Whatever had happened at Lake Evermere stayed outside my knowledge. I only knew my captor returned smiling with a covered tray and 2 silver fish worth fighting monsters for. Yvette set the tray on my table. "I brought what you wanted. You actually found them. I killed the larger spirit personally." She said that while straightening a napkin. "Look, I need you to understand the scale of my problem." Yvette traded dominant monsters and table manners with the same calm face. She had changed into a clean maid uniform. Rain still darkened the ends of her hair. I hated that she looked good after committing lake-based grocery violence. Yvette sat beside me and lifted a piece of fish with her fork. "Open. Can feed myself. You can also hide tools." Fair accusation. Unhelpful timing. I opened my mouth. The fish tasted rich, smoky, and almost sweet. Whoever taught Yvette had done it right. The poison stayed out of my bloodstream, which already made this dinner better than Yvette's last 2. Yvette watched every bite like she expected applause. "Was the lake dangerous?" I asked. A gatekeeper objected. "To the monster?" Yvette glanced at her clean gloves. "To me." Looked at them. "Did he survive objecting?" "He received compensation." I decided not to ask what the compensation had covered. Yvette added more fish to my plate. 3 adventurers were fighting the spirits. They were inefficient, but one knew how to remove the poison. "You saved them? They were between me and your dinner." "Naturally. It's excellent," I admitted. Her shoulders relaxed. Praise remained my safest weapon against her. Dangerous sentence, but true. I took another bite and felt something sharp catch in my throat. Air stopped. I grabbed the table. Yvette's smile vanished. "Declan!" She pulled me upright and struck my back once. The bone stayed lodged. Yvette caught my jaw, pressed her mouth to mine, and drew the bone free with her lips. Then she stayed there one breath too long. My lungs restarted. My judgment took longer. Yvette held the tiny bone between 2 fingers. "Better?" I liked the breathing part. "Can repeat both parts." I cleared my throat. That sounded like a threat. Yvette smiled. It was an offer. The kiss worked. The steel door stayed locked. Attraction did not erase the room, the drugs, or the key around her neck. Yvette placed the bone aside and fed me another piece. I chewed with the caution of a man eating both dinner and future hardware. When the plate was half empty, Yvette rested one hand over mine. "Your father's order still stands," she told me. 3 years for an heir. My answer still stands too. "You've already shared my bed." I held her stare. "Because you removed my choice." Her fingers tightened, then loosened. Yvette looked away first. Then she reached beneath the table and lifted a folded black bundle. A pair of rabbit ears slipped free. Black stockings followed. I stared. Yvette's smile returned with criminal confidence. "You liked this style when you were younger. I was vulnerable. You were 16. I gave her my most injured expression, a famously vulnerable age. Yvette held the stockings against her uniform. "Your eyes remain vulnerable." I looked at the wall. A warm drop touched my upper lip. Yvette leaned closer. "Your nose is bleeding. Old training injury. You trained your nose?" I wiped my nose. "Elite technique. Very rare." She laughed softly and folded the outfit with painful care. The walking red flag had won that exchange. I accepted the loss and protected what remained of my dignity. Yvette stood. "I have to finish the manor rounds. I'll return after the kitchens close." She kissed my forehead, gathered the empty bowls, and left the fish plate behind. The key turned. Her footsteps faded. I waited through 50 counts. Then I spat 4 long fish bones into my palm. Fish was never just fish. During dinner, I had slid the straightest bones beneath my tongue and into the blanket hem whenever Yvette looked at my face. The choking bone had been real. The remaining 4 were mine. I opened the black book. It repeated the routine I had timed during captivity. Yvette's cleaning circuit usually kept her upstairs for 3 hours. The book had no view beyond my records. 3 hours! 4 bones! 3 catches inside 1 steel lock. 1 visible scratch could expose the whole attempt. The first bone entered the keyhole. My 1,000 simulations had taught my fingers the angle. The real lock added weight, rust, and Yvette's liquid metal reinforcement. The bone flexed. I turned slowly. It snapped before the first click. 20 minutes gone. I ground the second bone flatter against the stone table and tried again. The outer catch moved. 1 click. The second bone cracked and lodged inside. I spent the next hour teasing the broken piece out with the third bone. My fingertips split against the keyhole. Blood made the bone slippery. I wrapped my thumb in a strip torn from the blanket and kept working. The black book opened to its perfect simulated lock. I glared at it. The practice version didn't have rust. The page changed. Rust and extra weight appeared inside the catch. Wonderful coaching. The book flipped another page into my forehead. 90 minutes vanished before the lock returned to where I had started. The black book opened beside my knee and showed the schedule I had built. Yvette's normal return was 90 minutes away. "Helpful," I whispered. "Could have shown concern earlier." The book shut on my thumb. "Rude." "Consistent." I used the third bone. The first catch opened again. I shifted left and found the second. The bone bowed almost double. Another click. 2 catches. The third bone came out split down the middle. 1 tool remained. 1 catch remained. The safe margin on my 3-hour window had dropped to 30 minutes. Upstairs, Josie was already cutting an hour from that schedule. She told me later how, 1 hour early, in the manor kitchen, she found Yvette finishing the spirit fish soup alone. Josie tied on an apron. "Head maid, let me help." "You finished your assigned work?" Yvette asked. "Yes. Is this for the kitten?" Yvette's spoon stopped. Josie had seen the hidden trays and decided Yvette was caring for an animal beneath the manor. The mistake was adorable and catastrophic. "What kitten?" Yvette asked. "The secret one. You carry food downstairs 3 times a day." Yvette resumed stirring. "Something like that. Does it need blankets?" Yvette kept stirring. "Better ones." Josie pointed toward the hidden tray. "Books? More than it reads." Josie smiled. "Maybe it needs another kitten." Yvette rested one hand against her stomach. "Perhaps one is already coming." No doctor had confirmed anything. Yvette was already treating the guess as fact. Josie chopped vegetables twice as fast. Her help cut an hour from Yvette's chores. The hidden route beneath the manor still took time. I needed every second of it. Back in the steel room, the last fishbone trembled between my fingers. The third catch resisted every angle from the simulation. Then I heard metal touch stone beyond the outer passage. Yvette was coming. My expected 30 minutes disappeared. The last bone bent. Every failed simulation had taught me to force the catch before it reset. The real bone could not survive that movement. So I broke the habit the book had beaten into me. I eased pressure instead of forcing it. The lock gave one tiny click. Footsteps reached the door. I turned the bone farther. The final catch opened. The steel door shifted inward. I caught it before the hinges made noise and slipped into the dark passage. Behind me, Yvette's outer key turned. A tray hit the floor. Yvette had opened the only door expecting her prisoner. Her key stayed in the lock. The bed behind the door was empty. Yvette called through the open doorway. "Declan?" Her voice stayed calm. That was worse. I ran. The passage sloped beneath the manor and smelled like wet stone and old sewage. Air moved across my left cheek. I followed it. The first turn was pitch black. During captivity, I had loaded a basic light spell from a housekeeping manual on Yvette's shelf. I snapped my fingers. A pale glow formed above my palm. The little spell worked. A silver knife crossed the light and buried itself in the wall beside my head. Yvette stood at the far end of the passage. The dropped dinner tray lay behind her. Fish soup ran across the open cell threshold. She looked at the door, then at me. Her empty hand was already forming another blade. You could have asked for a walk, she told me. You say no to clothes. That was temporary. I pointed back toward the steel room. The prison was temporary too. It's still here. Yvette's metal spread across the floor. Silver threads raced along both walls and sealed the passage behind me. I used shadow step. My body snapped around the corner. Heat climbed through both legs, but the spell carried me across a drainage channel before the metal closed. Yvette's threads followed and formed a net ahead of me. I dropped to the sewage ledge and slid beneath it. The net cut a strip from the thin blanket I had wrapped around my waist. A metal ribbon caught my ankle. I kicked off the ruined boot before Yvette pulled tight. The ribbon dragged the boot back to her. "Declan!" Yvette called. "You're making this difficult." "That is the plan." I reached an old laundry cellar beneath the west wing. Shelves of folded sheets stood between me and the service stairs. I pulled the nearest shelf down. Linen baskets rolled across the floor. One hit Yvette's knees as she entered. She did not fall. Of course she did not fall. Liquid metal lifted every basket at once and threw them aside. I kicked open the service door and reached the upper hall. Carrington maids moved somewhere beyond the next staircase. I heard Josie laughing with another servant. I turned away from them. If Yvette found me beside the staff, her rage would have witnesses and targets. An unused guest room stood open on my right. I entered, grabbed a heavy wardrobe, and pulled it toward the hall. The pull reopened the wound beneath my ribs. Both feet burned from shadow step. I kept dragging. Yvette's footsteps reached the stairs. I shoved the wardrobe over. It crashed across the passage and blocked the doorway. A liquid metal spear punched through the back panel before the dust settled. Yvette cut the wardrobe into 3 pieces without slowing down. I had already crossed into the adjoining guest room through a narrow connecting door. A second wardrobe stood beside the bed. I climbed inside, pulled the door nearly shut, and pressed the black book against my chest. Yvette entered the first room. "Declan," she called. "Come out, I forgive you." Metal ripped through the fallen wardrobe. A silver ribbon searched under the bed while another opened the window. The remaining strand slid through the connecting doorway. It stopped outside my wardrobe. I held my breath. The ribbon touched the handle. A maid called Yvette's title from the far hall. Yvette withdrew the metal before the servant entered. "Return to the kitchen," Yvette ordered. "Head maid, we heard the crash." A shelf fell. Yvette lied smoothly and sent her away. Then she drove 3 metal spikes through the wall beside my hiding place. One passed close enough to cut my sleeve. I stayed still. Yvette searched the room twice. She opened the bath screen, checked the curtains, and sent a metal ribbon through the chimney. Then she returned to the first room and destroyed the wrong wardrobe again for emphasis. My captor had lost patience and started bullying furniture. Eventually, her footsteps moved toward the courtyard. I remained inside the second wardrobe. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Exhaustion pulled my eyes shut. The black book shot from my arms and hit me across the nose. I woke without making a sound. "Useful," I whispered. "Still rude." 30 minutes after Yvette passed my hiding place, I slipped from the wardrobe. The manor had gone tense. Doors stood open. Servants whispered about broken furniture and the head maid searching rooms without explaining why. One senior maid suggested waking the guards. "No guards," Yvette snapped. "Return to your posts." Good. Guards would have sealed the service stairs. Her secrecy left them empty. I took a torn laundry cloak bearing a faded Carrington lion inside the lining. Then I used the exterior service stairs and avoided the occupied wing. No staff member saw me leave. Yvette had nobody to punish for helping me because nobody had. Before sunrise, I crossed the outer wall wearing an undershirt, a laundry cloak, and what remained of my noble dignity. I was free. I was also barefoot, hungry, broke, and alone. 2 days after escaping Carrington Manor, I was still limping away from the capital on a muddy country road. My laundry cloak had torn at both knees. One boot was gone. Hunger had reduced Duke Carrington's heir to a blonde scarecrow with excellent cheekbones. Freedom looked better from inside the prison. I kept it anyway. Stopping near Carrington territory gave Yvette private roads, loyal staff, and time to hide me again. I needed witnesses she could not control. Westbridge Academy trained nobles and mages in public. Its teachers, students, and letters home would make another secret cell hard to hide. So I headed there. I had no horse, gold, or respectable trousers. I drank from a ditch, slept beneath a cart, and traded a silver button for stale bread. House Carrington status had become breakfast money. Shadow step could shorten the road, but each use heated my legs and reopened my burned foot. I saved it for emergencies. Naturally, an emergency found me before dinner. Before sunset, outside a small farming village, 3 bandits had a woman trapped against a tree. She wore travel leathers and carried a mage's staff. The bandits stood too close for her to cast without catching herself in the blast. The leader held a knife near her throat. His 2 friends searched her pack. I had 1 working movement spell and an empty stomach. I had also escaped a steel room by inches. I still stepped off the road. 3 men robbing 1 tired woman, I called. Did courage reject all of you together? The bandit leader turned. His gaze moved over my face, torn cloak, bare foot, and exposed legs. Then he smiled in a way that made my skin crawl. Forget the woman, he told his men. The pretty one will sell for more. 1 bandit laughed and promised they would have their fun before selling me. My rescue attempt had upgraded me into the preferred victim. New personal record. I pulled the cloak tighter. House Carrington pays 2,000 gold for each captured bandit. The leader looked at my rags. You don't have 1 gold crown. It'll be embarrassing when the poor man catches you. He left the mage and walked toward me. Good. The 2nd bandit followed. The 3rd kept 1 hand on her shoulder. I pointed at him. Bring your friend. I don't want anyone claiming the humiliation was unfair. The leader's pride did the rest. He ordered the 3rd man away from the woman. All 3 spread around me. The trapped mage finally had distance. The leader caught the edge of my cloak and yanked it open. A hooked brand marked his belt buckle. His grin widened. I drove my elbow into his throat. The 2nd bandit reached for my hair. I used 1 short shadow step and appeared behind him. His hand closed on rein. The 3rd bandit rushed me with a club. I stepped aside and let him hit his leader across the shoulder. The leader spun and punched him. I had turned professional criminals into a roadside family argument. Pretty and slippery, the leader muttered. Your standards remain the most offensive part of this meeting. Fire lit the road. The woman drove both hands forward. A wall of flame wrapped around the bandits before they could turn. The leader tried to use his friend as a shield. The fire curved around the hostage and struck him anyway. The 3rd bandit ran toward the fields. A burning line crossed the road ahead of him and closed the escape. Their weapons hit the dirt. The leader's professional kidnapping speech ended in screaming. The fire collapsed seconds later. 3 burned bodies lay across the road. The mage lowered her hands and leaned against the tree. I had created the opening. She had performed the rescue. Honestly, I was comfortable with the division of labor. The woman looked me over from bare foot to tangled hair. You arrived like a blonde mermaid who lost the ocean, she told me. That's Duke Mermaid to you, she laughed. Are the rags a profession? Seasonal nobility. The mage lifted her pack and offered me a hand. Maribel Kestrel. I learned later that she was the support mage Yvette had met at Lake Evermere. At the time, she was a beautiful stranger who had burned 3 predators. Her eyes kept dropping to my bare legs. In my defense, the cloak had stopped defending me. I'm Declan, I told her. Maribel glanced at the road behind me. Running from anyone? A complicated domestic situation. Maribel tilted her head. A wife? I tightened the cloak. Worse, a head maid with project management skills. Maribel smiled. I married last night. My husband has spare clothes. You can eat at our village before continuing your mermaid migration. My stomach growled before I could object. I followed her. On the walk, Maribel described herself as a former adventurer settling into married life. Her husband's name was Ronan. That name did not mean anything to me then. Maribel recited his favorite meals and preferred blankets with bright, rehearsed devotion. She never said whether Ronan enjoyed being married. The village appeared beyond the fields before dark. Every front door stood open. No children ran between the houses. No smoke rose from the cook fires. Tools lay beside half-finished work. A basket of apples had spilled beside a doorstep. Rain had turned them soft. Food still waited on one table. A broom blocked another threshold. People had left quickly. Nobody had returned. Where is everyone? I asked. At the lake harvest, Maribel replied. The spirit season feeds us for months. The answer fit. Lake Evermere. The empty houses didn't. A woman whispered beside my ear. I love you. I turned. The road behind us was empty. Maribel kept walking. You heard that? I asked. Heard what? Her answer came too quickly. A second voice whispered from somewhere between the houses. I love you. Maribel smiled at me. You're exhausted. Exhaustion usually insults me in my own voice. She laughed and pointed toward the largest house near the square. We're staying there. The mayor offered it while everyone works at the lake. After dark, inside the mayor's borrowed house, Maribel offered hot bath water, clean clothes, and spirit fish. The clothes belonged to Ronan. The shirt fit across my shoulders and hung loose at the waist. Maribel looked me over. My husband wears it better? Good. I was worried your marriage lacked competitive standards. She handed me a cup of water. I wet one finger, touched the drop to my tongue, and waited for numbness before drinking. Maribel raised one eyebrow. Do you test every cup? Only after the last beautiful woman drugged me twice. Twice? Took the cup. She believed repetition made the lesson romantic. Maribel laughed, but her eyes stayed on the cup. The water was clean, the fish was safe, the house still smelled faintly of blood. I checked the window latches while Maribel set out dinner. Every window opened outward. The back garden wall was low enough to climb. I had promised myself never to enter another kind woman's house without locating the exits first. I found the blood smell near one closed door at the end of the hall. Maribel stepped between me and the handle. "That room stays shut," she told me. "Why? Private married life?" The smile returned. The blood smell remained. I let the door go because I needed food, sleep, and a message sent before I started another losing fight. After dinner, I turned the torn laundry cloak inside out and showed Maribel the faded Carrington lion stitched into the lining. "My full name is Declan Carrington. Duke Carrington is my father." Maribel stared at the crest, then she laughed hard enough to grip the table. "The fire lion's son arrived barefoot in a curtain? Laundry cloak." That correction saved the story. I leaned forward. "Contact my father. Shelter me until his people arrive. You receive 20,000 gold." Maribel's laughter stopped. 20,000? Half when the message reaches him, half when I leave safely. She checked the crest again, then my face. Her eyes moved toward the closed door at the end of the hall. Maribel folded the cloak carefully. "You can stay tonight. I'll arrange the message at dawn." She promised safety. The locked door across the hall kept me from relaxing. Maribel showed me a bedroom across from the closed room. The bed had been made recently. A man's spare boot stood beneath it. One heel carried dried mud from Lake Evermere. Maribel placed a clean shirt on the chair and watched me notice the boots. "Do not open that door," she repeated. "My husband dislikes strangers." "Your husband lives in the blood-scented room?" That answer was cooked. Maribel wished me good night and walked away. I locked my bedroom door, set a chair beneath the handle, and kept the black book under my shirt. Near midnight, I woke because my bladder had declared independence. The house had no indoor washroom. I moved the chair and entered the dark hall. A dog barked behind the forbidden door. The sound came low and rough, then it broke into a human cough. I stopped. Maribel opened her bedroom door behind me. She was fully dressed. "Why are you awake?" she asked. "I need the washroom." "Outside, behind the kitchen." Another bark came from the closed room. I looked at Maribel. "Your shy husband sounds trained. My dog sleeps with him." "You forgot to mention the dog." Maribel's smile held. "He doesn't like strangers either." She guided me toward the back door without touching me. The moment I stepped outside, she locked it behind me. Subtle. The outdoor washroom stood beside the garden wall. A narrow window from the forbidden room opened above it. I climbed onto the washroom roof and pulled myself to the ledge. The smell of blood was stronger there. I looked through the glass. A man knelt on the floor wearing a metal collar. He was Ronan Briggs, the sword and shield leader from Yvette's Lake story and Maribel's supposed husband. His sword and shield lay beyond reach. Dark marks covered his wrists where the chain had rubbed them raw. A food bowl sat in front of him. Maribel held the chain attached to his collar. "Good husband," she murmured. Ronan lowered his head. Maribel tightened the chain. "Speak!" he barked. The sound I had heard through the door came from a grown man forced to act like her dog. Maribel stroked his hair. "Tomorrow, our guest will complete the last offering." Ronan's hands clenched against the floor. Maribel tugged the chain. His fingers opened. "The god of love chose us," she told him. "Duke Carrington's son will make our bond permanent." The name God of Love meant nothing to me yet. Final offering meant Maribel planned to kill me. Ronan's head lifted a fraction when she named me. His eyes passed over the window without recognition. Then Maribel touched the dark mark above her heart. Ronan dropped his gaze and barked again. I no longer believed the harvest story. The empty houses, blood smell, and Ronan's collar told me the village was part of the ritual. I had escaped one woman's domestic prison and accepted dinner inside another. Excellent work, Declan. I climbed down before Maribel checked the window. Plan 36 began immediately. Plan 36 was running away. I slipped back through my bedroom window, grabbed the cloak and black book, and packed blankets beneath the sheet. I placed Ronan's spare boots under the blanket to give the body weight. The disguise would survive one glance. I only needed one. Then I climbed out again and dropped behind the garden wall. Shadow step carried me past the first field. Pain burned up my legs, but distance mattered more. I reached the tree line before Maribel entered my bedroom. The chair scraped. A pause followed. Then the room exploded behind me. Fire blew through the window. The bed frame hit the yard. Maribel had discovered my blanket husband and taken the rejection personally. I kept running. Yvette later told me how she found the strip of laundry cloak her metal had cut away beneath the manor. She followed my scent and the Carrington thread toward the same village. By the time Maribel finished destroying the bedroom, Yvette stood at the front door. The woman I had escaped and the woman I had just escaped were now one front door apart. That same night, inside the mayor's house, Yvette sat across from Maribel while I ran through the fields. Yvette later told me what she saw inside. Ronan's warning was the part she heard word for word. I never learned Maribel's private thoughts. I didn't need them. Her actions told me enough. Yvette had come to retrieve the young master who escaped her steel room. Maribel opened the front door before Yvette knocked twice. The support mage still wore the same traveling dress from Lake Evermere. Her chest mark stayed hidden beneath a high collar. Smoke from my destroyed bedroom drifted through the hall behind her. Yvette looked at the broken window and scorched wall. The torn strip of my laundry cloak hung from her hand. Maribel followed her gaze. "Your young master left in a hurry." Yvette stepped inside. "He usually does when someone lies to him." Maribel laughed like that was charming. Then she welcomed Yvette with tea. The table looked almost normal. 2 cups, fresh fish, a white cloth hiding old bloodstains beneath one corner. The chain running under Maribel's chair ruined the effect. Maribel folded her hands and smiled. "Master Yvette, I hoped we would meet again." Yvette glanced toward the blood-scented hallway. "You prepared the spirit fish well. I meant master in love." Maribel leaned closer. "Your advice changed my life." Yvette accepted that title with the calm of a woman receiving a promotion. "Of course she did." Maribel poured tea. "You told me to stop waiting and take what I wanted." "Told you to be honest about your desire," Yvette replied. "I was." Chain scraped behind Maribel's chair. Ronan Briggs crawled into view on his knees. He still wore the metal collar from the forbidden room. Bruises ringed his wrists. The chain ran from his throat into Maribel's hand. Maribel stroked his hair. "My husband has become wonderfully obedient." Ronan's eyes moved toward the front door. His body did not follow. The mark had him trapped inside his own muscles. Yvette studied the bowl beside him, then the collar. A liquid metal thread slid from her cuff and tapped the chain. Maribel pulled the chain away. "Private property." Yvette's thread withdrew. "So is Declan's bedroom. He still escapes it." Maribel tugged the chain. "Ronan, greet my teacher." Ronan's jaw tightened. The black-red mark beneath Maribel's dress pulsed. Ronan barked. Yvette tilted her head. "He enjoys this?" Maribel smiled wider. "He resisted at first. He understands me now." Yvette mistook the collar for consensual roleplay. She gave Maribel one formal nod. "Congratulations on your marriage." The kitten joke had escalated into a chained man. That gag was officially retired. Yvette lifted her cup. "Declan dislikes restraints when they are used on him." Maribel laughed. "Men complain before they accept happiness." Yvette glanced at Ronan's raw wrists. "Does he complain often?" "Less every day." Ronan's shoulders tightened. That sentence should have ended the tea party. Instead, Yvette asked the question that brought her there. "Declan escaped Carrington Manor," Yvette said. "His trail ends in this house." Maribel's fingers stopped on Ronan's hair. "He stayed here. Where is he?" "He left 2 hours ago." Maribel sipped her tea. "He was frightened. I offered shelter but he ran." Yvette placed the torn strip of my laundry cloak on the table. The cloth carried mud, sweat, and enough of my scent for a tracking spell. "He slept here," Yvette said. Maribel looked toward the room she had destroyed. "Briefly." Yvette's cup touched the saucer once. "Which direction? I can find him." Maribel rose. "Give me the cloth. The tracking spell will follow his trail." Yvette's eyes lowered to Maribel's chest. Maribel covered the spot with one hand. "A blessing! Then use it!" Maribel took the cloak strip and walked toward the back room. "The spell needs privacy," Maribel told Yvette. "Please keep my husband company." She left Ronan chained beside the tea table. The back room door shut, and black-red light crawled beneath it. When the door closed, the house became quiet. Yvette looked at the ruined bedroom across the hall. Burned wood lay in the garden. My fake body still rested under torn blankets. She crossed the hall and lifted one blanket. Ronan's spare boots stared back at her from the bed. My decoy had fooled Maribel for one glance. Yvette looked from the empty blankets to the bent steel key at her waist, then to Ronan's chain. Yvette asked him a question no sane relationship expert should need answered. "Did Declan leave because I locked him away?" Ronan stared at the floor. Yvette's voice dropped. "I fed him, protected him, gave him everything he needed." Ronan's eyes lifted toward her. Yvette added, "I only wanted him safe." The chain trembled in Maribel's empty chair. Ronan tried to rise. The collar dragged him back to his knees. From the back room, dark light flashed beneath the door. The tracking spell pulled at the mark controlling Ronan. A black-red thread appeared between his collar and the wall. It thinned. Ronan's fingers dug into the floor. "Run!" he forced out. Yvette turned. Ronan lifted his head. His eyes were clear for one breath. "Last room," Ronan rasped. "Open it. Fiona, village, run." The thread snapped tight again. Ronan collapsed onto both hands. The mark forced his mouth open. He barked once, then gagged on the sound. Yvette sent a liquid metal pick into the collar lock. The moment it touched the mechanism, the chest mark in the back room flashed. Ronan's body arched against the chain. She withdrew the pick before the control burned him further. The collar and Maribel's mark were linked. Touching the lock burned Ronan through the same control. Yvette stood. "Ronan!" She stepped closer. "What did Maribel do?" He could not answer. The tracking light in the back room brightened. The collar dragged his chin toward the floor. Yvette looked at the final locked door, then she chose the warning over the T. At the end of the hall behind the last door, liquid metal slid from Yvette's sleeve and entered the lock. The mechanism resisted. Yvette closed her hand. The lock came out of the wood in one crushed piece. She opened the door. The harvest story was a lie. The room held no tools, nets, or stored fish. Harvest baskets were stacked beside the wall, still packed with clean rope and empty jars. The villagers had packed for work. None of them had reached the lake. Rows of bodies lay beneath stained harvest cloths. Black-red channels cut through the floor around them and joined beneath Maribel's mark carved into the stone. Wedding ribbons hung from the rafters. Each ribbon ended above a different body. Maribel had decorated the massacre like a ceremony. A woman in a kitchen apron lay near the door. Yvette told me that apron reminded her of Josie. She remembered threatening to make Josie disappear and calling it a joke. Yvette's hand closed around the bent key at her waist. Then Yvette saw Fiona Beckett. The fire mage's burned sleeve still carried mud from Lake Evermere. She had survived the monsters beside Ronan. She had not survived Maribel. Ronan's sword and dented shield rested on a shelf above her. A red vial of rapid healing potion remained strapped inside the shield rim. Maribel had kept Ronan collared away from his own gear, so the potion stayed untouched. Yvette stepped between the bodies without touching them. A harvest bell hung near the far wall. Yvette struck it once with her metal. Nobody outside answered. The entire village was already in that room. Her liquid metal withdrew from the lock and formed a thin blade around her wrist. Maribel's voice reached her from the doorway. "You were not supposed to see that yet." Yvette turned. Maribel stood behind her with the cloak strip in one hand. The mark above her heart glowed through the fabric. Ronan's chain moved behind Maribel like a tail. Yvette asked one question. "Did your god order these deaths?" Maribel looked into the room. The answer came without shame. Maribel lifted her chin. "The god of love gave me power. I chose the offerings." She kept taking Ronan's eyes. Yvette pointed at the covered rows. "The villagers?" Maribel glanced at them. "They tried to stop our wedding." Maribel smiled as if the explanation improved anything. "Declan was going to complete us," she continued. "His blood and status would have made the final offering perfect." Yvette's metal blade lengthened. Maribel spread both hands. Black-red thread slid from her sleeves and sealed the doorway behind Yvette. "But your love is stronger," Maribel said. "Offer yourself instead. The god will bless us both." Yvette stared at her. Maribel stepped closer, excited now. "We're the same. You locked Declan away. I locked Ronan away. You removed his choices because you knew what he needed." Yvette's face stayed still. Maribel kept digging. "You threatened every woman near him. I removed the woman near mine. You taught me that love should overpower refusal." The threads around the doorway tightened. Maribel pointed toward Fiona. "She touched him. The village defended her. They made their choice." Yvette's blade became a wire thin enough to disappear in the room's red light. Maribel sent the first black-red thread toward her wrist. Yvette cut it before it touched skin. 3 more came from the floor. Liquid metal pinned them to the wall. Maribel watched the counter and smiled. She kept negotiating. Yvette looked once at Fiona. Then she looked at the villagers. "I imprisoned Declan," Yvette said. "I drugged and forced him. Those were my choices." Maribel's smile returned, as if Yvette had finally agreed. Yvette finished the sentence. "You murdered a village and called the bodies devotion." Maribel's smile vanished. A liquid metal wire crossed the room. Maribel's throat opened in one clean line. She dropped the cloak strip. Her body hit the floor before Ronan's chain did. The mark above her heart flickered. Ronan's collar went loose. The black-red thread sealing the door dropped. Ronan dragged one knee forward in the hall. The corpse room channels went dark. Then Maribel's hand moved. She pressed her palm against the cut at her throat and looked up at Yvette. "You told me to take everything," Maribel choked. "You told me love mattered more than fear." Yvette did not look away. "I gave you those words," she replied. "You chose these bodies." Maribel laughed through the blood in her mouth. Yvette's metal hovered over her heart. "I will bury you," Yvette said, "after I find Declan." Maribel's eyes widened with something close to delight. A voice filled the house. "I love you," came from the walls, the floor, and every black-red channel in the corpse room. The mark on Maribel's chest split open with light. Then the stored blood moved. It tore from the channels beneath the villagers and rushed toward Maribel's body. The floor buckled. The tea table flipped in the next room. Ronan's chain snapped against the wall. Yvette drove her metal blade through Maribel's chest. The body dissolved around it. Killing the human host had released everything the ritual stored inside the village. Blood climbed the walls in thick ropes. The covered bodies collapsed as the power left them. The house groaned under a weight it had never been built to hold. Maribel's dead face appeared across the ceiling, stretched wide through the moving blood. Her mouth opened around the same voice. "Nobody takes love from me!" Yvette slashed upward. The face split and reformed across the opposite wall. She wrapped metal around Ronan and threw him through the nearest window. The same ribbon snatched his sword, shield, and red potion from the shelf and hurled them after him. The roof burst upward. Yvette threw a metal shield over herself. The first blood hand crushed it against her shoulder. A second spear cut across her side and drove her through the tea-room wall. She came up on one knee and sent every loose knife, hinge, and chain in the house at the rising shape. The metal disappeared inside it without slowing the growth. A hand made of blood closed around Yvette before she could follow Ronan. The mayor's house split from foundation to chimney. The tea service flew into the street. One cup landed upright beside the broken front step, still full. The polite little meeting survived longer than the house. Above the village, Maribel's face formed inside a rising body, 10 times larger than the woman Yvette had killed. The beheading had worked. It killed Maribel's human body. Then it gave the god of love a bigger one. Minutes after the mayor's house exploded, I was still running along the road outside the village. The night behind me turned red. I looked back once. A giant hand rose above the rooftops and threw Yvette through the air. She crossed the road sideways and hit me hard enough to flatten us both. The woman I had escaped had returned as falling debris. Yvette's dress was torn across one shoulder. Blood darkened her side. One metal ribbon still circled her wrist, twitching like it wanted another fight. I pushed myself up. Yvette, her eyes opened. Run, she told me. The village answered with Maribel's voice. Declan! Her giant face rose above the rooftops. The mouth smiled while the rest of the body kept pulling blood from the ruined houses. You ran from me twice, Maribel called. Come home! I looked at the blood hand gripping the road behind Yvette. Your home has a serious plumbing problem. Maribel's smile broke. A blood spear crossed the field. Yvette's liquid metal wrapped around my waist and launched me off the road. The spear struck where my chest had been. It hit Yvette's lower leg instead. The impact folded the road beneath her. Bones snapped. Her metal brace shattered before it fully formed. Yvette made one sound and bit it off. Maribel leaned over the road. You kept him from me, master? Yvette formed 3 blades while lying in the crater. He chose to leave you. Yvette's first blade cut Maribel's blood wrist. Another split the spear, and the last forced the giant face back from me. Then Yvette's injured leg moved, and every blade wavered. The split spear kept coming in 2 pieces. I used Shadow Step and dragged Yvette behind a stone wall. Heat ripped through both legs. My old chest wound opened under the sudden weight. The wall exploded a breath later. Maribel's new body stepped beyond the village. She was taller than the mayor's house. Blood and black-red threads shaped her face, arms, and dress. The chest mark burned at the center like a second mouth. Yvette tried to stand. Her ruined leg failed. Leave me, she ordered. I stared at the woman who had drugged me, imprisoned me, and just destroyed her leg to save mine. I could leave her there and keep running. My hands moved first. I pulled her arm over my shoulder. Yvette resisted. Declan, she wants you. She also has terrible aim. Yvette caught my sleeve. Do not joke. Then stop bleeding and help me move. Another spear tore through the broken wall. I caught Yvette under her knees and back. Her body went rigid. Put me down! No! I adjusted my grip. I noticed. Then keep escaping. Met her eyes. Your family. Yvette stopped fighting my grip. Her eyes widened at the word family. I tightened my hold. Family does not own me. I chose to come back for you. Remember the difference. A blood hand swept across the road. I used Shadow Step. The world snapped sideways. We cleared the hand by inches and landed beyond the first field. My right foot caught fire inside Ronan's borrowed boot. I kept moving. The technique had never carried 2 people. Yvette's weight doubled the heat and stripped the air from my lungs. One step crossed a field. The next nearly dropped us into a ditch. My knees hit the mud. Yvette drove a metal hook into a tree ahead and tightened the line around my chest. The pole dragged us upright before the nearest hand closed. I carried her. She kept me moving. A blood spear landed ahead and burst into smaller needles. Yvette spread a metal fan behind us. The needles struck it hard enough to push both of us forward. She turned the impact into distance. Yvette wrapped liquid metal around her broken leg and locked it straight. She formed the second band around my chest to keep herself from falling. Release me, she said. You will burn out. You lost your chance to manage my decisions. The blood hand struck behind us and uprooted 3 trees. Yvette looked over my shoulder. Left! I trusted her. Shadow Step pulled us left as another spear buried itself where we had been. The monster crossed the fields faster than something that large had any right to move. Black-red hands grew from its shadow and crawled across the ground ahead of us. One hand reached for Yvette. Another reached for me. A third closed around every path between. Maribel had stopped chasing like a person. She was moving the whole field as one trap. My legs shook. Smoke rose from both boots. The black book hammered against my ribs under the cloak, opening and closing on its own. A blood finger crossed the flooded cart rut beside us. Running water shredded its tip. I pointed toward the trees. The river! Yvette looked toward the trees ahead. The current is high! Perfect! At this speed, it will kill us. I kept my eyes on the river. Maribel is also trying. I prefer the river's attitude. At the riverbank, the ground ended beneath my next step. I jumped with Yvette still in my arms. The first bloodhand reached the bank and plunged after us. Current hit my back and dragged us under. Cold water tore Yvette from my grip. Her metal band snapped around my forearm before the current could separate us. We hit the riverbed, rolled and disappeared beneath brown water. The hand entered the river. Its fingers came apart. Red strands peeled away and vanished downstream. A second hand reached farther, then lost its wrist to the current. Maribel screamed from the bank. Give Yvette back, she demanded. She belongs with me. Even as a giant blood monster, Maribel still treated people like misplaced furniture. Ordinary river water had just folded her god-sized pursuit. Beautiful. Then Yvette stopped holding her breath. Her metal band loosened around my chest. Bubbles escaped her mouth. Blood loss and the impact had taken what little air she had left. I caught her face and pressed my mouth to hers. She reacted weakly, then understood. I gave her air and kicked toward the surface. Her eyes opened against the current. She caught my collar and pulled herself closer for one more breath. Then she pointed downstream. The current rolled us beneath a fallen tree. My burned legs barely answered. Yvette's metal hooked the trunk and pulled us around it. A broken blood hand reached after us beneath the surface. Running water stripped the fingers down to black threads before they touched my heel. We surfaced farther downstream. I dragged her onto the muddy bank and rolled beside her. Yvette coughed river water across my shirt. Then she looked at my mouth. You kissed me willingly, she whispered. I kept you breathing. Both happened. I wiped river water from my face. Please bleed less before flirting. Her mouth curved once. Across the river, Maribel's blood body slammed both hands into the bank. The current ate every finger that crossed. Maribel's face twisted above the trees. Nobody accepts my love, she screamed. Then I will take the final sacrifice. I will become a true god, and everyone will love me. The mark on her chest pulsed toward the village. If she finished transforming, she could leave the village and keep feeding on every settlement ahead. Then the giant turned away from us. She still had Ronan. Great! Another god with relationship issues? After the current carried us clear, I found a shallow cave above the river and pulled Yvette inside. Dawn was still hours away. Cold light from the black book gave me enough to see her leg. The lower bone had shattered. Liquid metal held the limb straight, but the brace shook whenever Yvette's concentration slipped. I tore the laundry cloak into strips and bound the brace against her thigh. While I worked, Yvette gave me 3 facts. Fiona and the villagers were dead. Maribel had chosen the killings. Ronan had warned her about the last room. Her hands shook only when she mentioned the apron that reminded her of Josie. Yvette watched my hands. You should have left me. You have told me 3 times. I imprisoned you. My hands tightened the bandage. Yes. I drugged you. Yes. Her voice dropped. I forced you. Tied the final knot and looked at her. Yes. Yvette's eyes lowered. I told Maribel to overpower refusal, she continued. She used my words. Fiona died. The village died. The cave stayed quiet. I sat back on my heels. Your advice helped her justify it. Her murders were still her choices. Yvette's fingers closed over the torn cloak. My choices hurt you. They did. She looked at the river entrance. Why did you save me? I answered plainly. You saved me first. You are family. I decide what that word means now. Yvette looked back at me. I cut her off before she mistook rescue for forgiveness. The prison, the drugs, and what you forced were wrong. Saving me does not erase them. Yvette nodded once. If you want any place beside me, I said, you ask. You accept my answer. You never lock me away again. Her voice came small. I promise. You promised not to hurt me before. No, Yvette said. Then judge me by what I do next. She kept both hands open and did not move closer. That was the first useful thing her apology had done. Yvette lifted her face. May I kiss you? Stared at her. She waited. 1 kiss, I told her. Yvette kissed me softly and pulled back when I did. Her hands stayed open. The cave entrance remained clear. She stopped when I did. Then she tried to stand and collapsed against my chest. The romantic moment lasted 4 seconds. Blood loss remained undefeated. I lowered her beside the cave wall and shoved the black book under her ruined leg. It slapped shut on my fingers. Helpful as always. The book opened to a red page. 1 line appeared beneath the drawing of Maribel's mark. Final offering, a bond returned in full. Yvette read it with me. Ronan had used his 1 free breath to name Fiona, the village, and the last room. He had tried to save people while Maribel still controlled his body. The book's rule was plain. The final sacrifice had to love Maribel back. Her obsession with me was one way. Yvette and Maribel shared no bond. Yvette reminded me what Maribel had admitted at Lake Evermere. Ronan had grown up beside her, and he had promised they would never leave each other. Ronan, I said, Yvette's face hardened. He is the final sacrifice. The chest mark on the page pulsed. Maribel had already turned back toward him. Yvette pushed herself upright against the wall. I will stop her. I looked at the shaking brace. You can barely stand. This began with my advice. It continued with her choices. Yvette formed a metal brace around her leg and reached for the cave wall. I caught her wrist. You do not get to protect me by deciding for me. Fear crossed her face. Real fear. For me this time. She will kill you, Yvette said. She tried. The river embarrassed her. Yvette gripped my sleeve. Maribel saved me from the bandits before she tried to sacrifice me. Ronan is still alive. More people die if she leaves that village. Yvette looked toward the red sky beyond the cave. I tightened the final knot in the torn cloak. We go together, I told her. Before dawn, Yvette reshaped the metal around her leg into a walking brace. I took her weight on the other side. Following the red glow led us toward the village and the man still trapped inside it. Our resources were one wounded mage, one burned movement spell, and one rude book. We expected an ugly fight. Together, we left the river and headed back toward the village. Ronan was still alive. Maribel needed his love to finish becoming a god. This time, turning back was my choice. Before dawn, Yvette and I left the river cave to return to the village. A gold coin slid from beside her broken boot. It stopped against a hooked mark cut into the cave wall. I had seen the same hooked brand on the bandit leader's belt buckle before Maribel cooked him. Fresh knife cuts beside the cave wall formed that symbol again. This was the regional gang's hideout. For once, the bandits had left me something useful. I pressed the marked stone. Nothing moved. Yvette slid liquid metal into the knife cuts and pulled sideways. A narrow panel shifted inward. Gold filled one chest. Weapons filled the rack beside it. Discarded boots, burned masks, and 3 matching belt buckles confirmed who owned both. The cash was ugly, stolen, and exactly what we needed. I took one straight sword and tested the balance. The blade carried several chips, but the point stayed true. Yvette limped toward the weapon rack. That stance is poor. I learned from a book that killed me 185 times. Then the book should have tried harder. Our relationship was healing beautifully. Yvette melted damaged swords, buckles, and armor plates into liquid metal. The metal wrapped her shattered leg from hip to ankle. A rigid brace locked the bones in place. 2 narrow fins opened behind her waist and lifted her weight off the ground. She tested the lift. Her injured foot left the ground. The brace carried the leg, but her face drained white from the strain. Yvette added a metal ring around her waist and fed 3 weapon ribbons through it. The harness gave her movement and turned every stolen blade into ammunition. It also made every drop of blood beneath the brace visible. I tied the sword at my side and offered her the gold chest. Yvette looked at me. Why? Paid for a gatekeeper's hand. I assume disaster has a budget. She converted the chest hinges into more metal and left the gold. Good. Even our looting stayed efficient. The black book opened on a red drawing of Maribel's chest mark. The vessel rebuilt around the visible mark every time. I guessed the mark was only the surface. Whatever fed, it sat deeper, and I still had no idea where. One pattern kept repeating on the page. Before every attack, black-red lines converged near the mark, then spread through the body. I tapped the drawing. I can test the mark. That is all I have. Yvette tightened the brace around her leg. And if your guess is wrong, then we learned very quickly. She gave me the stare usually reserved for kidnappers. I pointed at her. You solved yesterday's disagreement with a throat cut? It worked. For 7 seconds. Yvette had no reply to that. At sunrise, above the ruined village, Maribel's blood body towered over the empty streets. She had grown since the river. The road signs, roofs, and mayor's house had fused into her lower body. Black-red veins crawled from every cellar toward the chest mark. Each pulse pulled another piece of the village into her. Every second left Ronan with fewer places to survive. The giant stood roughly 10 times her human height. Black-red arms reached from the rooftops and fed blood into the chest mark. Ronan was somewhere inside that ruin. We had one job before Maribel reached him, make her look at me. Yvette raised a thick iron pillar from the ground beside the village road. It carried me above the rooftops while she hid inside its hollow center. The pillar shook. Her brace held one leg. The metal lift carried the rest. Pain bent her forward, but she pushed anyway. Maribel's face turned toward the movement. I stepped onto the top and drew the bandit sword. Maribel! The giant smiled. Declan, you came back to me. Blood hands rose from 3 streets. The lane behind her chest stayed open, inviting me straight toward the mark. I heard you needed one last rejection. Maribel's smile sharpened. Ronan will love me forever. Yvette will understand me. You will kneel. I raised the sword. 3 bad predictions before breakfast. Ambitious. Blood hands opened beneath me. Yvette's voice rose through the pillar. This remains the worst plan I have heard. You built the secret prison. That was organized. I looked down at the blood hands climbing me iron. Fine, your plan was worse, mine is faster. Then I jumped. I am the world's best parachutist. I had never used a parachute. In my defense, Maribel did not know that. She reached for me exactly as planned. Once Maribel committed to the bait, the real plan started. Minutes earlier, inside the bandit cave, I had given Yvette the whole plan while she built the brace. Maribel wants me alive, I told her. I make her reach. You open her chest. I get one shadow step to test whatever feeds that mark. Yvette looked at my burned feet. One step. Maybe. Then make one enough. If she catches you, I cannot promise a clean rescue. Cover me. I held out my hand. We can survive ugly. Yvette took it. I will. I glanced at her brace. Good. We both brought damaged equipment. Her stare nearly killed me before the god could. Back above the village, Maribel's right hand closed around my falling path. I twisted in the air and used shadow step. Heat tore through both legs. My body blurred past her thumb. The iron pillar split open beneath me. Yvette launched upward inside a shell of liquid metal. Her injured leg harness flared behind her. Hundreds of silver spikes unfolded around her body. Maribel saw Yvette too late. The first spike entered her wrist. Maribel tried to close her hand around me. The joint locked halfway. The next 50 pinned both arms away from her chest. Blood sprayed across the rooftops and raced back toward the wound. Yvette's chains cut the return streams before they reached it. Yvette turned every remaining piece of bandit metal into a single rotating barrage. Spears struck Maribel's ribs. Chains tore across her shoulders. A silver wedge opened from beneath the chest mark and forced the blood body apart. Maribel screamed. The sound shattered every window still standing. The chest mark flashed wildly, and every blood hand in the square reached toward the wound instead of us. For one beat, Maribel had lost control of the whole village. Yvette drove both hands forward. The metal spread inside the wound and pulled. Maribel sent a blood spear through Yvette's flight harness. One fin broke. Yvette spun, caught herself on a chain, and used the spin to drive the wedge deeper. Maribel's torso opened from collar to waist. For one incredible second, the giant had a hole wide enough to see the ruined village through it. Yvette hovered in front of the wound, held aloft by the brace built around her broken leg. Her whole body shook from pain. She still looked terrifying. I hit the roof below, rolled, and came up with the sword drawn. The chest seal hung exposed inside the wound. Then the wound closed. Blood rushed back from every street. The torn sides slapped together. Yvette's spears bent, disappeared, and pushed out again as useless silver scraps. Maribel laughed. The metal we used on monsters cannot kill a god. She flexed both arms. The spikes pinning her joints bent backward. Blood covered the metal, hardened around it, and turned our weapons into extra armor. Yvette cut the chains and dropped before Maribel could drag her into the chest. Her chest rebuilt around the glowing mark. Yvette dropped toward the roof. Her flight brace caught her at the last second. Maribel looked down at her. Master, you taught me to make love stronger than fear. Blood armor hardened over the wound. Now fear me. Maribel smiled again. The barrage had hurt her and taught her exactly how we attacked. I used shadow step toward the visible seal before the armor finished closing. One step, one sword, one chance to test the target. My blade struck the chest mark. My steel stopped. Its edge skidded across the black-red surface and broke near the guard. The mark pulsed once, unharmed. I had hit only the seal. Whatever anchored it sat somewhere I could not reach from the surface. Maribel's face moved beside me. She had predicted the step. The exposed seal had drawn me exactly where she wanted. You always move behind the blade, she whispered. A blood fist hit my ribs. Yvette fired a metal line toward my waist. Maribel caught it between two fingers and snapped it. The punch launched me across the village. I smashed through the outer wall of a ruined building. The first impact broke the sword. Then the wall emptied my lungs and the collapse buried me beneath rock. I tried to move. My body gave me nothing. Outside, Yvette screamed my name. She drove her broken flight brace toward the collapsed building. Maribel's blood chains wrapped around her arms, waist, and metal brace. Yvette cut the first chain. 4 more replaced it. The injured leg buckled inside the harness. She still dragged herself one body length toward me before the chains lifted her off the roof. She launched every remaining blade toward the rubble covering me. Maribel caught the blades in one hand and crushed them. Declan rejected your love, Maribel told her. Let him die. Yvette pulled until the chains cut through her sleeves. Declan! A sphere of black-red light formed above Maribel's palm. The nearby blood hands fed into it until the dawn dimmed around the glow. She aimed it at the collapsed building. Yvette stopped pulling. Her mouth opened, but no sound came. The blast swallowed the rubble. Stone lifted, broke, and disappeared inside red light. Maribel held Yvette still and made her watch. When the light faded, I did not move. Yvette had once locked me away because she could not bear losing me. Now she believed she had watched me die. Ronan, the man Maribel had broken, was about to get one clean choice. Her whole godhood would balance on what he did with it. Minutes after Maribel's blast, beneath the broken stone, somebody grabbed my collar and dragged me toward heir. Ronan Briggs pulled a roof beam off my chest before I could decide whether the hands were friendly. My first thought had been Yvette. My second was that Yvette had never dragged anyone that gently. Ronan was the conditioned warrior who had warned Yvette about the corpse room. His collar still circled his neck. The black-red thread inside it flickered instead of pulling tight. One side of his face was swollen. Both wrists were torn raw. He had crossed half the ruined village carrying the shield Maribel kept away from him. When Yvette beheaded Maribel's human body, Ronan's collar loosened once. Her barrage damaged the mark again. My failed sword strike only made the intact mark pulse. Every hit on Maribel's mark had weakened her control. Ronan had finally earned more than one free breath. He used it well. You alive? Ronan asked. I tasted dust and blood. Define alive. You look terrible. You spent yesterday barking in a collar. I coughed. Let's avoid rankings. Ronan almost smiled. There. Two broken men bonding through mutual disrespect. Healthy stuff. Then Yvette screamed somewhere beyond the rubble. Ronan's face hardened. Maribel still held her above the square. Blood chains wrapped Yvette's arms, waist, and ruined leg brace. Every time she cut, 2 more formed from the street. Maribel had stopped searching the rubble. Yvette kept pulling against the chains while staring at the blasted building. Every failed movement opened the cuts along her sleeves. Maribel tightened the chains whenever Yvette looked back at the rubble. Everything they did told me they thought I was dead. That mistake was the only cover we had. Ronan crawled toward his dented shield. Yvette had thrown it outside the mayor's house before the blood vessel took her. The red vial remained strapped inside the rim. He tore it free and pressed it into my hand. Rapid healing potion, Ronan told me. Drink. I looked at the collar, then the vial. You could be handing me poison. Ronan glanced toward Yvette's scream. Then die suspicious or move useful. I drank. The potion hit my stomach and spread like liquid fire. Broken ribs pulled into place. Air forced back into my lungs. The cut above my eye closed. Then my hand started shaking. The potion repaired enough structure to keep me moving. It did nothing for blood loss, burned legs, or common sense. My ribs stopped grinding. They still hurt with every breath. My left hand closed again, but the fingers shook so badly I could barely hold the empty vial. Ronan took the glass before I dropped it. How long? I asked. Minutes, Ronan answered. Maybe less if you use that movement spell. Common sense had left around the parachutist's speech anyway. Ronan helped me sit against the wall. Across the square, Maribel lifted Yvette by one chain and slammed her through a roof. Yvette hit hard, rolled, and formed one last metal blade from her broken brace. Maribel caught the blade between 2 fingers. Declan is gone, Maribel told her. Stop fighting and let me teach you how love survives. Yvette spat blood at her face. Maribel's smile disappeared. The walking red flag had terrible relationship habits. Her rejection skills remained elite. Ronan watched the chest mark pulse. His collar tightened with the same rhythm. I saw that mark appear at Lake Evermere, he told me. It formed over her heart. Every pulse burned through the collar like her heartbeat. Black-red lines gathered beneath the surface mark before spreading through the vessel. My sword had struck the mark and broken. Ronan's collar said the pulse started deeper. If the heart anchors the mark, I said, removing it should collapse the vessel. Should? Ronan repeated. I tested certainty earlier. A wall reviewed my work. Ronan looked at the rubble around us. Poor review, very physical feedback. That was our entire medical and tactical conference. Maribel needed one final sacrifice. Every threat and plea still curved back toward Ronan. Force kept failing against her chest. Ronan's attention could bring her closer than our weapons had. Her obsession could open the chest. The problem was the collar. If the mark tightened before Ronan reached her, our plan ended with both of us kneeling. He touched the cracked metal around his throat. When she looks directly at me, the control gets stronger, Ronan warned. I pointed at myself. Then make her look at what she wants more. His gaze shifted to me. Exactly. Terrible plan number 2 had entered the chat. Ronan tightened the loose collar around his own neck. I watched him do it. Can you make her believe the control still works? For a minute, Ronan answered. I need less, I told him. Ronan lifted his sword. The blade had survived being thrown through a window, which already made it the most reliable person in this village. He held out one hand. I took it. Ronan pulled me up while Yvette was still being crushed above us. He threw my arm over his shoulder and dragged me toward the square. Each step sent pain through my repaired ribs. I kept my breathing shallow and smeared fresh dust over the closed cut on my forehead. A dead man who looked too healthy would ruin the performance. I let my body hang limp. When Ronan walked into the open with me as his prisoner, Maribel stopped attacking Yvette. Every blood hand in the village turned toward us. Ronan dropped my knees into the dirt and gripped my hair. The grip looked brutal. His thumb stayed clear of the wound near my temple. I found the offering, he called. Maribel's blood hands stopped in place. Maribel leaned toward us. Alive? Ronan lifted my head enough for her to see my face. Barely. Good, Maribel replied. He should understand what he completes. Yvette saw me. My coat was burned. My head hung forward. Blood covered Ronan's hand where he held me. Her last metal blade fell apart. Declan? Yvette's voice broke. Maribel used that 1 second. A blood fist struck Yvette across the square and pinned her beneath a collapsed chimney. Yvette still tried to rise. She looked at Ronan with pure hatred. You coward! Yvette rasped. Ronan did not answer her. Good. A reply would have exposed us. Maribel lowered her giant body toward the street. Blood gathered beneath the chest mark and shaped a human-sized face and shoulders. Her old features formed inside the vessel. Her eyes stayed fixed on Ronan. You came back, Maribel whispered. The collar tightened around his throat. Ronan dropped his sword. Maribel smiled at the collar as if the mark had forced him down. My husband, Maribel murmured. Bring him closer. Ronan dragged me across the blood-slick street. Each step carried us toward the chest mark. Yvette fought beneath the chimney. Ronan, do not touch him! Maribel flicked one hand. The chimney pressed harder against Yvette's injured leg. Her scream tore through the square. I kept my body loose. Ronan reached the base of Maribel's chest. A ramp of blood rose beneath his boots and lifted him toward her human face. Maribel touched the collar with one finger. The black-red thread flared. Ronan's jaw locked, his shoulders pulled backward. One hand opened against his will. His sword slipped from his hand and landed across the blood ramp. His boot came down over the guard. For one ugly second, I thought the control had caught him again. Yvette's face tightened. She ripped one arm free from the chimney and reached toward him with a metal shard. Maribel saw it and drove a blood spike through the shard, pinning Yvette's hand to the roof beside her. Watch, Maribel told Yvette. This is what returned love looks like. Yvette stared at my hanging body. You have never seen returned love. Maribel's face twisted. The insult bought Ronan half a breath. Maribel leaned close. I knew you would choose me, she murmured. Ronan looked at the woman he had known since childhood. I spent 10 years making you feel invisible, he told her. That failure is mine. Maribel's face softened. Ronan finished the sentence. The bodies are yours. His heel kicked the sword upward. Ronan caught it in both hands and drove the blade through the chest mark. He buried it to the hilt. Maribel's smile died against his face. The mark flashed from black to white. Every chain in the village pulled tight at once. Yvette's pinned hand tore free. My body slid from Ronan's grip and struck the ramp. The blood ramp buckled. Her control vanished for one breath. Ronan locked both hands around the hilt and forced it deeper. Maribel screamed his name. Only then did the part of our plan hidden under the rubble pay. Ronan had given me one condition under the rubble. When I turn on her, Ronan had told me, stay behind me. I had stared at him. You're volunteering to stand between me and a god. I should have stood between her and this years ago, Ronan replied. I had grabbed his wrist. One opening. Then we both move. Ronan had met my eyes. If she reaches you, I take it. Back in the square, the blade tore a black line through Maribel's chest. The heart behind the mark finally showed itself. It was smaller than I expected. Black-red veins wrapped around it and fed every street in the village. The blade had entered through the center, but the heart kept beating around the steel. Maribel's regeneration fought the wound. New blood tried to close over Ronan's wrists. He drove his shoulder into the opening and kept it wide. Maribel clawed for Ronan. Ronan twisted the blade and held the wound open. Now, Declan! Stood. Yvette's eyes widened. Maribel turned toward me too late. The potion had left me one clean movement. I spent it. Shadow Step tore through my burned legs. I vanished from the street and appeared inside the wound behind Ronan's blade. Heat stripped the breath from my lungs. The potion's repair tore along my ribs. One knee almost folded inside Maribel's chest. Ronan caught my coat and held me upright. Take it, he ordered. My hands shook so badly I nearly missed. Then my fingers closed around the corrupted heart. It kicked once against my palm, Maribel screamed. Every blood hand in the village spasmed. I planted one foot against the collapsing chest and pulled. Black-red threads snapped from the heart. Each broken thread killed a different part of the vessel. One giant hand collapsed across a roof. A blood tower lost shape and flooded the street. The chains around Yvette went slack. The chest mark split. I tore the corrupted heart free. The entire vessel folded around the empty space. Blood chains released Yvette. The chimney rolled off her leg. Ronan's collar cracked down the middle and dropped from his throat. Maribel's giant body lost its shape. Her face formed once inside the falling blood, stripped of every confident smile. I landed in the street with the corrupted heart beating in my hand. The anchor was out. For one glorious second, we had won exactly what we came to win. Then Maribel's collapsing arm sharpened into a black-red blade and shot toward my chest. My legs refused another shadow step. Ronan moved first. Before Maribel's blade reached me in the ruined square, Ronan stepped between us. The The strike entered beneath his shoulder and stopped deep in his chest. Ronan had no shield. He used the only thing left between Maribel and me. His body hit mine hard enough to knock the corrupted heart from my hand. Maribel's blade dissolved. Ronan stayed standing for one breath, then his knees folded. I caught him before he hit the street. The potion left enough strength in my arms to hold him. Closing the wound remained beyond me. I pressed both hands against his chest anyway. Ronan! He looked past me at Maribel's collapsing face. The broken collar lay beside his hand. Maribel stared at the wound she had made. The giant arm that attacked me collapsed into rain around Ronan's feet. Her other hand stopped crushing walls and turned toward him. Her blood body kept falling apart, but her human face pulled itself together around grief. Why? Maribel whispered. Ronan coughed and forced his eyes open. I promised I would never leave you. Maribel's mouth trembled. Ronan reached toward her and stopped halfway. Maribel pulled one trembling hand from the collapsing vessel. For the first time since the village, the blood around her fingers looked human. I did love you, Maribel, Ronan said. I failed you before that god ever found you. Her fingertips almost reached his. A black-red hand formed behind her and tried to pull her face back into the vessel. Maribel fought it long enough to keep looking at him. Ronan looked at me once. Make yours count! His hand fell. Ronan Briggs died in my arms. The broken collar beside him never tightened again. I got 1 second to feel it. Then the corrupted heart beat on the ground. The sound shook the village. A black-red line raced from Ronan's blood to the broken chest mark inside Maribel's body. The cracked collar beside him lifted from the street. Its two halves turned toward Maribel like iron caught by a magnet, then melted into the line. Ronan had loved her back. His blood completed the final offering. Maribel screamed. Her human face bent toward Ronan. The larger face behind it opened in the opposite direction. One begged him to breathe. The other swallowed the sound and turned it into power. The scream came from the woman and the god of love at the same time. Every blood channel beneath the village ignited. The collapsing vessel stopped falling. Every loose stream reversed direction. Blood that had been flooding away climbed walls and ran uphill toward the center. It pulled inward. Roofs, walls, bodies, and blood rushed toward Maribel's chest. The empty space where her heart had been became a spinning black-red core. Yvette ripped herself free from the broken chimney and reached for me. Yvette saw Ronan in my arms. Her face changed, but she did not stop moving. Yvette shouted, "Declan, move!" I lifted Ronan's body. The ground split beneath us. A wave of blood tore him from my arms and drove me across the street. Ronan hit the stones beyond my reach. The ritual pulled harder. The ruined mayor's house slid across its foundation. Harvest bells tore from the corpse room and rang while flying through the air. The ritual consumed the whole village for one completed promise. Maribel's human face formed inside the core. She looked at Ronan's body, and her grief fed the light around her. You stayed, Maribel whispered. The god of love answered through her mouth. Complete. The word hit every channel at once. Black-red hands rose from the core. One caught Yvette's waist before she could reach me. She cut it. A second wrapped her injured leg. She severed that one too. Then 6 more hands closed around her arms, throat, and broken brace. Yvette drove liquid metal into the street and spread a wide brace across the road. The core tightened around the space where Maribel's heart had been. Blood exploded from the center of the village. The blast tore the remaining roofs away. Stone lifted around us. Ronan's body disappeared behind the rising blood. Yvette's brace snapped at the knee. The force dragged her backward while the blood hands pulled her toward Maribel's core. Maribel's human hand appeared inside the mass and caught Yvette's shoulder. Her face twisted with panic, but the hand kept dragging. Whatever remained of Maribel could still see what the ritual was doing. Blood tightened around her wrist and dragged harder. Yvette changed the broken brace into hooks and buried them in the stone. 3 blood hands tore through the hooks. The blades bent. Yvette shouted, "Declan!" Ran. A blood hand swung toward my head. I ducked beneath it, grabbed a broken metal hook, and cut another thread from Yvette's shoulder. The thread reformed before it hit the ground. My first step failed. The potion had closed bones. My strength remained gone. I crawled 2 strides, forced my legs under me, and jumped into the blood current. The heat burned my palms raw. I kept reaching. Yvette's fingers caught mine. For 1 second, we held. Yvette used my grip to drag herself forward. Her free hand reached the street and formed one thin metal line around my forearm. Then the ritual pulled her body into the black-red core up to the waist. I wrapped both hands around her wrist. "Let go," Yvette ordered. "It will take you too." I pulled harder. "You don't get to decide for me." Her grip tightened. The blood mass climbed my arms. I drove one burned foot against a broken wall and pulled until my vision narrowed. Yvette moved 1 inch toward me. Then Maribel's core opened behind her. 100 blood threads wrapped Yvette's body and dragged her back harder. My shoulder tore. The metal line around my forearm snapped. Yvette caught the broken end and wrapped it around our joined hands. I still refused to release her. The corrupted heart rolled past my knee, beating without a body. I grabbed it with one hand and crushed every black-red vein I could reach. The heart split along Ronan's blade wound. Dark light spilled between my fingers. The core ignored me. Maribel's vessel was dying. The ritual had already taken what it needed from Ronan. We had killed the vessel's anchor. The completed ritual had become larger than the vessel. Yvette's hand began slipping from mine. Every physical answer was gone. Of course, the Black Book waited until human strength had failed. Its timing remained vicious. "Black Book!" I shouted. The artifact flew from the street and opened against my chest. The corrupted heart lifted with it. Ronan's broken collar rose from the stones. Both objects hung above the book for one breath, caught inside the same red light. The book offered no promise about either of them. It struck my chin on the way up. I barely felt it through the blood heat. Its red-sealed pages whipped in the blood wind. "I need power," I told it. "Save Yvette, save Ronan, save Maribel if anything human is still inside her." The book gave me no reassuring message. Its help had always arrived after the damage. The silence warned me this time would be worse. The blood cord dragged Yvette deeper. I pressed my bleeding palm against the open page. "Take whatever route you were waiting to use." The red seal flashed. For one instant, the same seal appeared where Ronan had fallen and inside Maribel's collapsing face. The book reached the ritual through my blood bond and the corrupted heart. Black pages wrapped around my arm and crossed onto Yvette's wrist. The book linked our hands with a strip of ink-dark light. Another page snapped around the corrupted heart. A third brushed Ronan's broken collar before the blood wind tore it away. The ritual pulled again. It dragged us toward the core. The book pulled in the opposite direction. My shoulder nearly came apart between them. Then the village vanished. I landed on my knees inside the Black Book's changed space. The old white void was gone. Black pages formed the ground. Red light moved beneath them like fire under glass. Torn warning pages circled the horizon, all carrying the same sealed mark. Yvette's hand had disappeared from mine. A black imprint of her fingers remained around my wrist. It faded with every tremor. Ronan was gone. The ritual still roared somewhere beyond the space, close enough to shake every page. Each tremor carried the pressure of Yvette's grip slipping farther away. The Black Book floated in front of me. I grabbed it with both hands. "Where is she?" Since the first morning, the rude thing had answered serious questions by hitting my head, groin, or face. At the worst moment of my life, it finally discovered language. A voice came from the open pages. "Look up." Inside the Black Book's changed space, I looked up. A crimson eye filled the sky. It had no visible face or body. Rings of fire, each larger than Carrington Manor, turned around one black pupil. Crimson clouds crossed the eye's white surface and burned away before reaching the center. The eye looked at me. Every loose page in the space flattened. The red light beneath my feet stopped moving. Even the Black Book lowered itself. My knees struck the pages. Pressure locked every joint. My arms pinned themselves against my sides. My jaw barely moved. I could breathe, blink, and regret my entire week. The Black Book opened beneath the eye. One name burned across its page. The Crimson King. Another evil god. The god of love had used blood and desire. This one needed only attention to crush me into the floor. Apparently one relationship apocalypse had earned me a premium upgrade. The Crimson King's voice entered my skull. The sound carried no echo. It simply replaced every other noise, including the ritual beyond the pages. "You called for power!" I tried to raise my head. The pressure increased. "I called the book," I managed. "Respectfully, you are much larger than expected." The giant pupil narrowed. Terrified politeness remained my final available weapon. The Crimson King looked through me. I felt its attention pass over the training deaths. Shadowstep burns, the steel room, the river, and Ronan's body. Each memory opened for one instant, then shut before I could hide it. "You hunger for strength," it told me. The words pressed against every old wound at once. "I need enough to pull Yvette out," I said. The Crimson King answered. "You need enough to survive touching what holds her. Can you give me that?" I asked. The rings of fire slowed. "I can change you." Red flame appeared above the Black Book. Heat curled the nearest pages before the flame vanished. The Crimson King was offering enough power to return me to the fight. I would still have to reach Yvette and survive whatever held her. "What do you take?" I asked. The eye brightened. Before it answered, the Black Book snapped shut once. The giant pupil turned toward it. Then the book opened and tore out one page. The page carried the same red seal that had marked future warnings and the ritual pull. It floated upward with its written side turned away from me. The Crimson King read it. The red seal left the paper and hung in the air between them. I could see the shape. I could not see a single word behind it. Every ring of fire stopped. Heat rolled across the pages beneath me. The edges of the floating page curled without burning. The giant pupil tightened with visible irritation. The pressure crushing me vanished for 1 second. The Crimson King's attention shifted entirely to the page, and I managed one full breath. You kept that? The Crimson King said. The Black Book answered without explaining anything useful. He chooses. The eye focused on me again. The pressure returned, but its tone had changed. I was still prey. I had become expensive prey. You would spend this page on him? Yes, the book replied. I stared at the artifact. It had spent the entire story assaulting me and withholding context. Now it was negotiating with a god over my body. Consistent, at least. The red-sealed page glowed between them without turning toward me. The Black Book had finally annoyed a god with one page. Naturally, it still hid the words from me. The Crimson King's voice lowered. I will take nothing from your soul, no price. Endure the fire and the power is yours. The Black Book offered no warning. That was worse than a warning. Free power sounded suspicious from a giant burning eye inside a hostile book. I forced out the question. What happens to my body? The Crimson King answered. It becomes capable. Asked. What happens after? The Crimson King did not answer. How much fire? I asked. All of it. Pain was apparently being filed under free shipping. I could still feel Yvette's fingers beyond the Black Book's space. Her grip weakened whenever the ritual shook the pages. The Crimson King's pressure forced my chin down. The book held the red-sealed page between us. Yvette had drugged me, imprisoned me, and forced what I refused. The metal line around my forearm thinned again. She had also crossed a storm for my dinner and lost a leg saving me. She returned to the village because I chose to fight beside her. Rescuing her would not forgive the prison. The red-sealed page trembled. Yvette's grip flickered again. This choice was mine. I chose to go back before the god of love chose for me. And yes, she was gorgeous, terrifying, and had once produced black stockings with military confidence. The Crimson King waited. I forced my head higher. Give me the power. The Black Book's pages slammed flat beneath my hands. The crimson eye opened wider. Accepted! Fire appeared inside my chest before I could brace. Every nerve ignited at once. The pressure released just enough for my body to convulse. My hands clawed into the pages. The paper burned beneath my palms, but the book held them in place. Heat forced every muscle tight, released it, then tightened again. I screamed. Crimson light tore through my arms and legs. My back arched against the invisible pressure. The pages blackened beneath my knees. Each breath pulled more fire into my lungs. The fire reached the old assassin wound first. The scar opened with light and sealed again. Then it entered every place Shadow Step had burned. My feet felt the first 100 training deaths all at once. My bones heated from the inside. My vision turned white around the giant eye. The Black Book's pages tore free around me and burned without becoming ash. The Crimson King watched without blinking. The Black Book stayed open beneath me. Its pages turned one by one, recording pain faster than I could understand it. Endure! The Crimson King ordered. The word pushed more fire into me. The floor vanished beneath my knees. I hung in the crimson light with nothing supporting my body except the king's pressure. I tried to pull away. The book pinned my palms to its pages. Yvette's name came out through my teeth. The ritual answered from somewhere beyond the Black Book's space. Her grip flickered against mine again. The pain climbed higher. Her slipping hand flashed through my mind. Ronan stepping into the blade followed. I stayed. The fire reached my heart.